So there we go. Now I'm recording too. So here's Hasta. It's basically the whole middle part of Virgo. And so Virgo is whatever Virgo means, it becomes also quite attached with Hasta. So we get this nice quote. This must be a Jordan Peterson quote. I don't have the name here. But if you fulfill your obligations every day, you don't have to worry about the future.
Yeah, that's GP.
Yeah, that sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's Hasta. It's that sense of service that you get out of Virgo really becomes involved with Hasta. One of the things that still bothers me, I haven't really figured out what the meaning of it is, but Hasta is ruled by the moon, but its deity is Savitur, the sun god, basically. And then actually, when you go into the Western stuff, you see some stuff attached with Apollo, with Hasta as well, I think. I haven't fully researched that, but some of that healing prophecy also comes into Hasta. That's why they sort of gets associated with a lot of this modern wellness type stuff as well, because there is a bit of prophecy, a bit of magic. Of course, in astrology, there's some prophecy there. Apollo is also the god of healing, but then the moon rules this. And so it's like the sun god, but a moon rulership. So there's a lot of that, what do we call them? The luminaries. You could almost sort of say that generally ruled by those luminaries. Savitur, the first rays of the rising sun, before it's even hit the horizon, it's that light that shines, generally. And of course, you know by now, Gayatri is fully related with Hasta, because Tat Savitur, the truth is Savitur. Savitur is that truth. So there's that, but there's still that, for me, it's still unresolved in my own mind, the sun-moon connection. They say it has the power to place what you want in its hands and gain what is sought. Well, that's sort of like saying if you fulfill your obligations every day, you don't have to worry about the future. You get what you want because you do it. You do what you have to do to get what you want, in a sense. You get a lot of different hand things. So there's a certain hand dexterity you see in a lot of these people. I saw a lot of people sort of working instrumentation, early aviators and people like that who had these like old school sort of instruments that had to read these gauges and dials and a lot of that sort of stuff. All those sort of hand pulled lever type stuff kind of gets brought into this. Well, Hasta, Hansa, they sometimes say, it means a couple different things. It gets certainly related with the hand, but they also talk about it means to laugh. Hansa is laughter. And so it's this smile, it's this laughter, it's this jovialness. And was it Hasta? Maybe there were some clowns in Hasta too. You get the elephants, you get the chariots, you get some. Anyways, we'll keep our eye because when we look at the people, because I think there's a couple clowns there. Maybe they're a little bit murderous and devilish clowns, but clowns nonetheless.
And just hope we get like Donald Trump or Justin Trudeau with some Hasta placements because of the clown comment.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I think that's one of the things of Hasta is that duality. Again, we get the duality of the sun and the moon in Hasta. And so a lot of times these Hastas really do have two very different faces that they can show to the world and bring forward.
After going through the nakshatras, I already feel comfortable saying this, but like when you think of the Western chart versus the Vedic chart, like someone who's got a Hasta placement in their Vedic means they have a Libra placement in their Western chart. So I find that that's interesting because you're saying the duality is there, which is the same duality that you find in a Libra placement in the Western chart, right? So I'm finding a lot of the nakshatras kind of explain the difference between the Western chart and the Vedic chart.
Sometimes they do. You get, when you're looking at the nakshatras, you're kind of getting very, very different.
It's deeper.
Yeah, it's deeper.
Yeah, there's a storyline associated with it.
Like, oh, it's like I'm reading that sign.
Yeah.
like it means all of those same things. So, and that's partially, I think, well, the moon rulership of this makes them quite reflective and reflective of the greater culture and things like
Mm,
that. And that's sort of also, again, the Libra tendencies is it's not the moon reflectiveness, but it's still a Venusian passiveness,
right.
sort of thing. So yeah, and they sometimes say sixth house or Virgo is enemies that we don't really see. Whereas the seventh house is actually enemies that we see. That's the person
Mm.
we actually have to negotiate with. Yeah. Whereas the
So hidden enemies is 6th and 12th house.
well, they say 12th, but sometimes they say seventh house yeah, sorry, hidden enemies are both of those.
6th, okay.
But the seventh again are those enemies that we know we're dealing with them in a sense through negotiation. Whereas the sixth house enemies, we want to defeat them. And the 12th house enemies are, well, those are it's our subconscious stabbing us on our own back, really.
Mm,
A lot of ways. So it's inside, and so we can't see it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the subconscious, like you say. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's our own undoing somehow, a lot of times. And so we see this, it relates with the elephants a little bit, the elephant trunk. And so Ganesh is going to have some relation with this thing. The lance, the spear. You think of that maybe with his tusks. I should look, we'll pay attention. Maybe some acupuncturists will have this. Didn't really occur to me before. We'll see where that lance and spear. But all these handy, a hasty harvest, hallelujah, a lot of these sorts of things that hatha. That's interesting because hatha of hatha yoga is often said to mean the sun and the moon. And so it also
Right.
relates with something like hasta. So we get this kind of stuff. This shows like we had Samhitas as physicians, so you get the healers, barbers, potters, elephant catchers, elephants and crocodiles. Harlots have this. And it's interesting. I haven't done it
If you
for
want honey, Gaurav, there's some squeeze one. I'm sorry.
no problem. I haven't done it for all of them, but Kosana country, when you look this stuff up, you find some pretty interesting things. You find out traditionally what they made and what they worked with, and so those are bits of research I still have to do yet. Brahma, creative, Deva, the highest, reaching for something more. Vaishyas, so they're kind of merchants, trading, negotiating, middlemen, this kind of different stuff. Looking for moksha, wanting freedom. And so you see like moksha, Deva, Brahma, you see it becomes quite creative in the way it seeks moksha and the way it does that, quite sort of almost balancing. There's a balancing act in Hasta. Usually they're very helpful, handy people. They just want to help people. And this is sort of their trade, in a sense, that service that they offer. Sage Pulaho, I don't know if we've really looked at him much. He was the guy who helped create all the animals, all the creatures of the forest, the wild. There it says the mythical beasts, also the lambs. So usually very much connected with animals somehow as well. This sort of thing. And even in a sense, they're kind of wild. They can also be a little bit like animals to a certain degree themselves. Had a bunch of daughters, kids, they all married great sages. The one kid got Kardama. He got the good wife. And he married her, and then he got his kid was an incarnation of Vishnu. So great children. Some more adopted children. So we see that, and then we see the adopted children also in these myths. We have to sort of watch for it in people's lives as well. And this sort of thing. The female buffalo. And so these are sort of lazy, like in a woman, they would just lie there and sort of take it and grunt and like a buffalo, in a sense. But also that sort of comes out in their mentality. Hastas can be a little bit boorish. They're often a little bit bigger people, actually. I don't want to say that, they can be big or small, actually, but a lot of times they are these sort of bigger, sort of pushy buffalo people, right? They can be ignorance, like the Durga Mahashuri was one of the big demons that Durga had to kill. And one of the main incarnations of that was this buffalo. And that usually represented for Durga, and compared to women, these days they talk about it representing like the arrogance and the pushiness. But a lot of times then the women are saying, oh, that's Durga, so it's the arrogance of man and the pushiness of men sort of pushing on. But I think just generally that's sort of over, I don't know, just pushy too. Yeah, big buffaloes. One of my Gurujis was saying that, these kind of jokes. So we get the Spanish plum, actually a member of the cashew family, is one of the main sources of food. So we could probably look at cashews also being related with Hasta, and there might even be some medicine in cashews. But we see with this one, a lot of vitamins and iron and all kinds of stuff going on that, good for the immune system. Great stuff. We get, this is actually, Mercury really likes this sign. Mercury's the most dual planet. Of course, it's his own sign, but now this is like his own nakshatra and his own very own corner. The interesting thing with Mercury is his Mula Trikona and his exaltation are pretty much the same. They're the same place. And that's one thing that's very unique of him. So in a way, it's like, they often say the Mula Trikona is like your office, where you go and the planets get something done in their Mula Trikona. The sign they just roll, that's like their home, they're comfortable there. Mula Trikona is office, they're a little bit more productive there. And then the exaltation is like their best friend's house. And so in a way, this is like, while Mercury likes being in the office, he likes having a few things to do, right? Mercury really likes dealing with information and all of this. We bring these laptops, we're all crazy about Mercury now, going crazy for information. And so we get that. We get there's a couple Pushkara Amshas here. So Mercury does very well in Hasta, generally, you could say. Of course, he's exalted in the middle portion of it, or maybe a bit early, but then you get a couple Pushkaras, and his exaltation point is basically Pushkara Amsha for all the planets. And so there's really something almost, you have to think there's almost something special going on in this part of Hasta. Mercury's exaltation, and then all the planets are Pushkara. And this little part, it's his exaltation is Mula Trinkona, so there's something kind of unique. Some people say that Rahu is also exalted here. I should have a note there to say who said that, because you'll find different versions of Rahu's exaltation everywhere. But I believe this person, so anyways, maybe if you can believe me, you can believe them. So yeah, just start throwing stuff out there.
I mean, if I paid for your opinion, I guess I have to put some value on it,
I
right?
guess
At the
you
end of
do.
the day.
Yeah. But what I would say is, somebody said Rahu is exalted here, and now we'll go and look at the Rahu's position here, and let's decide for ourselves, is what I'll say. We'll see how that works out. So we get Savitur. I'm not going to go through this too much, because I think you know Savitur and you can kind of read about him.
And I think I'm missing like half of the PDFs of the future classes. I think I have like the first 4 or 5 PDFs, but I'm missing all the other ones.
You know what I was going to do? I was just going to send you the whole document again at the end.
Okay,
If
sure.
that works. Because breaking it up, I've actually gone back to just working on my master document, because that whole broken up version was,
Yeah.
it was
Okay.
it was complete. I still have to go back to that and see the edits I made there and move the edits from that onto this one. So yeah, so you'll get it all at the end. And you'll see where I've done the research now, because it's different from your version, obviously, in some points. So you get Savitur. This is really anyone with moon in Hasta. I tell them all to do Gayatri mantra. This is basically their moon mantra. It's good for anybody with moon and Hasta. If the 5th lord is in Hasta, you could say this. If there's a planet in the 5th house in Hasta, you can say Gayatri mantra. And usually they're going to say, oh, that's the one I do. It's really fun to do that. Tell people to do spiritual practice, and they say, oh, I do that already. Okay, keep doing that. So there's the Gayatri. We see, I like Sri Aurobino's translation of this. We choose the supreme light of the divine sun, we inspire that may impel our minds, Savitur the impeller. He further elaborates, the sun is a symbol of divine light that's coming down, and the Gayatri gives expression to the aspiration, asking divine light to come down and give impulsion to all activities of the mind. He's an impeller, he pushes the mind forward. Very beautiful. Savitur he's one of the old gods from the Vedas. So he's often connected with Soma. You see him sometimes connected with Agyaman, who we just talked about, and Varuna, who's coming up, and these different guys. He's one of the old fellows. Savitur rises in brilliance, making light for the whole world. Surya shining brightly. He's filled the heavens and the earth with air and his rays. So very nice, Savitur. Purvasvaha, this is the heaven, the earth, and the atmosphere.
Wait, so Surya is Savitur, or they're two different?
They're often connected as being the same, actually.
Okay.
Savitur is he's one of the Adityas. One of Aditi's 12 of sun children. Aditya was the mother. We'll come to Aditya later, I think. Purva Ashad is Aditya. And so she's the mother of these 12 sun gods. And so Savitur is probably the most worshipped of the sun gods. So that's when really the time of Savitur has to do with the time when before sunrise, when you go out, you get up before while it's still dark, you do all your toilet. By the time the rays of the sun are coming up, you should be doing your spiritual practice. And then you do your spiritual practice until maybe a half hour after sunrise, and then you go on your day. Anyways, you can do whatever, but so that's a really special time in the Vedas, that's when you're supposed to chant the Gayatri also. It's a morning mantra, really. And so you chant that while the sun is coming on the horizon. That's the proper way to do it. And so that was a huge part of the culture. And so he's kind of sometimes the main one of the 12 brothers. And so they say, oh, you're Surya, generally. But that'll sometimes change.
Because my sun mantra is Om Sam Suryare Namaha.
Yeah.
Should I be using a Savitur one instead of Suryare?
Well, you could. Do you have placements in Hasta?
No.
Well, anyways, you could.
Thank gosh.
This is what I would say is if you want to commit to doing the Gayatri every single morning, then yes, commit to doing the Gayatri every single morning. If you're a little bit playing with your mantras, just play with your mantras. Play with Gayatri as well.
Okay, because I guess I do a planetary mantra every day, so I would only do like I'm looking. I guess I'm not confused, but I'm curious about. So I do Tat Savitur on Saturn day.
I would do on
Oh, Trayambakam on Saturday. Sorry, Trayambakam.
yeah, or Trayambakam like this on Saturday, or Saturn mantra on Saturday.
Yeah, so then on Sunday I'm doing Sun Suryare Namaha, but I'm feeling I should do a Savitur one rather than a Surya one.
You could do the Gayatri mantra, certainly.
Do the Gayatri, okay.
Yeah, you could, yeah. Yeah, why not? It's such a beautiful mantra.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the Savitur. So I added a bunch of this, actually, all this small print. I don't know what the heck to do with this. I just copied and pasted a whole bunch of this is the scriptural stuff on Savitur. And so we won't go in this too much because I've just sort of looked at this. I have to do something with it still. But there's a ton of scriptures. This is all Vedic stuff. Oh, that's what this is. This is the really proper way of doing the Gayatri mantra. Yeah, this is really, and so it does this warm up first. I love doing this stuff. So Bur Va Sva Ha That's it. Where is it? No, no, it doesn't keep going. Just does the first syllables. But anyways, you kind of put these things into the body before you do the mantras, and you do some here. Oh, here it is. Oh, and here's the Tatsavitur, and you put each one into the body like this. I love doing these ones. These are my favorite mantras. So I've added that recently because I just got really excited. I never saw that before. So there's that. The other thing, this is also added that you don't have in what I've given you, and this is Apollo. Horus, also I talked about Horus being a sun god from Egypt, Apollo being the big man, the solar dynasty, head of the solar dynasty and Greece. And so you get this kind of stuff. And part of the reason Apollo comes in here too is because in the West, they call the star constellation Corvus. It's the crow. And the Greeks associated that with Apollo's sort of pet crow, who he kept getting to do tasks for him, but would always delay things or mess things up. And Apollo always had to punish his poor crow. And so that was Corvus. And then, of course, the crow also, Apollo was like the Oracle of Delphi was an Apollo shrine. And so that was all about prophecy. And the crow is related to prophecy everywhere we look. We see in the West, we see all these spooky devis, right? With the crows sitting on their chariot. You get some like that. Saturn rides on the crow. Yama rides on the crow. Death rides on there. And so there's a lot. Crow is almost like this messenger between this world and the other world. And so it's quite powerful. And so you get all of that going through. You see it with Apollo. You see it even with Savitur to a certain degree. Jayatu, this is the vulture. This is Vishnu's vulture, I think. Jayatu. And so they also dealing with the dead, feeding on the dead, really, and cleaning all of that sort of stuff up. Fly very high, just like an eagle, but they come down and they eat the dirtiest stuff, like an agon, in a sense. And that way, the crow, the raven, very magical, mystical birds. Everywhere you go, they mean some kind of, they're related with some kind of magic. All kinds of gods. Horus, the falcon-headed one in Egypt. He came and he was eventually like the big boss of all of Egypt. Came and took on, who was his father? Osiris.
Ra.
Yeah, he was fighting with Seth, but his father was Osiris. And later in Egypt, Horus got sort of given all the titles that his father used to be given. And so he became really the big guru. It's interesting. It means the distant one. The golden Osiris. There is a bit of golden boy stuff as well in Hasta. This kind of stuff. I need to. God, I sat researching this for a week and none of these ideas came to my head. And I'm like, oh, I got to look into that more. Oh, yeah, there's that too. Oh, I should look into that more. So, anyways, I can do it, or you can do it, or somebody can do it. Let me know what you come up with. We say find things like the Sphinx. We find these different bodies, and these all became related with Horus, actually. And then we see the similarities. Horus got related with Jesus in a lot of ways. They figure he was an early prototype of Jesus, the sun god, which is what Jesus is, essentially. He's a sun god, a solar dynasty. And so that crucifixion and virgin birth and all of that kind of stuff comes to play in here. In a way, that's a little bit like Savitur, the birth of dawn, the birth of a new day, that to be impelled to do something is the birth of a new whatever you're impelled to do. So it becomes very interesting. All the eye of Horus all comes in there. Now there's some different things. It got very confusing when I was looking at this, and I never really figured out what the hell was going on with it all. But they talk about like Horus being the left eye quite a bit. And they relate him a lot also with those moon deities and the moon energy. But yet he's a solar deity. The same problem we're facing in Hasta. And so it's that sort of the way I see it almost is it's the feminine nature of the solar deity, in a sense. And so that's what allows it to do the prophecy and do the mysticism and deal with a lot of things that are, in a sense, the domain of the mysticism. It's sort of the domain of the feminine energy. And so this is the solar way, the masculine who's become the witch or something like that, in a sense. Now there's the eye of Horus and the eye of Ra. And this is what I never really got clear. Some say that Horus is the left eye and Ra was the right eye. Then they get also compared to each other. Those eyes, either way, whichever one they were, often were related with funeral rites and helping your ancestors cross the river Styx or cross over into the afterlife successfully. And so it's very interesting that way. It gets related with pineal gland, and that's something I just started pulling up. And so it all needs more research, more and more. Research never ends, my man. It just keeps going.
Ra is the sun god and is the right eye, and Eye of Horus is the left eye.
Yeah, but he's still a solar deity, but he's related to that sort of moon magic, which is, I don't know, it makes him a little bit more interesting somehow.
Yeah. All the moon's more mysterious than the sun. The sun just shows up and blasts rays, and the moon's kind of like, oh, it's kind of got this weird thing going on.
Well, Horus was the one in the eternal battle with Seth, with darkness. And so it was that eternal battle of good versus evil, all sort of played out on there. And of course, the sun is the truth and the light and all of that. And the darkness as well, it's dark kind of thing. So yeah, I would imagine Hastas have something to do with this, trying to dispel the darkness to a certain degree and in various ways. Now it also related with
an interesting thing it mentions here is the Eye of Horus protects by deflecting, whereas the Eye of Ra protects by instilling. So like the moon versus the sun as well there. So there's might be a deflection as well that happens with Hasta, where like they help kind of ward off the darkness in ways, maybe, where the Eye of Ra is like the weapon or the unstoppable force rather than the immovable object, maybe.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there's so much in these little clues, in a sense. We get the palm tree, Palm Sunday, Easter Sunday, resurrection time for Jesus, in a sense. He rode in with the donkey that day, the humility. Oh Christ our God, when thou didst raise Lazarus from the dead before passion, thou didst confirm the resurrection of the universe. Wherefore we, like children, carry the banner of triumph and victory. We cry to thee, O conqueror of love, Hosanna the highest, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. It's beautiful, but it's the sun coming, defeating evil, the resurrection from the universe. And so conquer of love, conquer, triumph with victory. And so Hosanna. So very lovely. We get the hand as, of course, a very powerful symbol in Hasta. Power, strength, protection. The hand can protect and it can punish. And that's sort of like Hasta in a way. It's like a lot of dual use technology. You can use it for military or you can use it for healing. And there is a lot of military involved and a lot of fighters with Hasta as well, these sort of placements. But you get a lot of that light and dark, good and evil. And it's really, that duality is very strong in Hastas. The potter's wheel, the impeller. Again, I think something else I should look into here is centrifugal force. This is the potter's wheel. That's sort of what it pushes all this clay outwards, in a sense, and then you're able to form it. Yeah, I talked a little bit about pumping systems. This turbines are drawing energy out, moving water.
I think it's a centrifugal force.
Yeah, oh.
Just if you search it, I think,
Yeah, anyways.
Oh.
Anyways, it'll find itself.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So the color green was interesting when I was doing my earlier research. Picasso had his green period and the time when his whatever planet was in Hasta, Venus, Stasha was in Hasta. And so he thought green was the most beautiful thing. And so he painted everything green. And you see that in with a lot of artists and the colors that are represented. I saw it a lot with Monet as well. They talk a lot about sinitis. I think this is typical with a lot of the moon nakshatras. There's that sensitivity of the moon. And so sensitive to a little bit of cold, a little bit of sniffles, a little bit of congestion and this sort of thing. Watery emanations from those. Very watery nakshatra ultimately. Yeah, nervous system. Anyways, didn't go too much
I
into
think
that.
my friend that's staying with me from Toronto right now, I think he's actually got some Hasta placements. So I think that's where it's coming into my life right now. And he's
Okay.
got a cold right now, or not a cold, but sniffles. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, maybe he does have some of this sort of thing. That can just be a moon placement as well. Friedrich Nietzsche, the lonely one offers his hand too quickly to whoever he encounters. It's kind of an interesting quote. Yeah, I gotta change I changed some stuff around, so I moved all that out. Just talk.
Why do you find that quote fits with Hasta?
I think I just put it in there because it's not reaching out the hand, it's giving a hand to someone. And so Nietzsche would have some, I put him in there because he has some Hasta placements. And so this was his, anyways, his quote about that, at least his perspective of Hasta. So we can look at his chart after. Let's just look at something now. Let's look at a chart. I like looking at charts. Let's look at Nietzsche's chart.
I'm excited to see this chart actually.
So anyways, there's a B rating and Pajan uses that time and now I'm using this time. So who knows who's right. But this is what I have for Nietzsche. An outcast, an outsider by his Rahu. Moon, all in Scorpio. Super intense dude, right? A little strange, a little doing his own thing with Rahu there. A little bit chosen one. So feeling like he can get away with things other people couldn't. And Moon is there, so also very familiar to everybody somehow. And there's a certain level of comfort people had with them. There's a little bit of a protector or a bit of a caregiver at the same time. That's in Scorpio. It's a debilitated moon. But still, there's going to be some of that coming involved. Moon's his ninth lord. And so his beliefs and everything like that comes into his personality. And it's all going wild. It's all like he blew a fuse. Eventually he did, but even before he was officially crazy, I think he also blew a fuse. And so we get that, his Hasta, there he is with Mercury and Hasta. And so a lot of his friends were maybe Hasta sort of people. What is it? And Mercury's not a great planet for him. It's the eighth lord. And so that was a lot of shocking, unexpected events from friends, from people he maybe reached his hand out to. In a lot of ways, people he thought were friends. He's got Mars there also. And so that's bringing a lot of controversy and criticism with friends. That's also how he made his money and like this. But there was a lot of fighting with friends. That's the sixth and the eighth lord coming together in that 11th house. And so it's, anyways, all kinds of trouble with friends and this sort of thing.
That loneliness quote makes more sense now too, right?
Yeah. And he's got as well his son is up here in the debilitated up in the 12th, but his whole world sort of revolves around like the studio or this sort of enclosed spaces. His imagination as well, in a sense. And so,
he's got Jupiter and Saturn in their house or in rulership in a way. So I'm sure that's a interesting dynamic that his luminaries are debilitated, but his Saturn and Jupiter are
and Mercury.
powerhouses.
Yeah.
And Mercury, right.
Yeah, and Mercury. Yeah. And so he had all this good luck coming through these three planets and very really good strengths. His Mercury, his writing, it's with Mars, and so these short aphorisms, quick writing. But then Saturn's in the third, sort of making these sort of things longer and being very careful and choosy in the way he's writing and the way he's communicating, very careful, but in his own house. And so he's kind of a master of that sort of editing and stuff like that. That Saturn also aspects his sun in the 12th house. And so Saturn in the third house also brings a lot of time alone, a lot of time in enclosed spaces as well. Yeah. So
I noticed he's got the same birth time as me as well. So I'm curious as to if there's any meaning behind that.
well, that's the birth time I came up with for him.
Okay.
At this point in time, I can't remember why I came up with that. Like I didn't, it's probably not even like it's probably not a complete rectification, but you can see I did a little bit of research. I looked here and there.
I think it makes sense too with his 10th house being in Leo and his first house being in Scorpio, because like his darkness and loneliness kind of exudes, but he's kind of proud about it in a way, right? So like there's this interesting, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, that has a lot to do with the Jupiter really strong in the 5th house aspecting first. It's that Jupiter's that pride of the guru in a lot of ways. And so that gives him that sort of thing, gave him a certain amount of hope, and probably that Jupiter really held them together for a long time, probably. And then we could look, anyways, we could look and see when his dasha, when he died or whatever that happened. And we might, yeah. So what is it? Beth from brain cancer, 1900 exactly, August 25th. So moon period. Oh, no.
Interesting how him and his mother is only 3 years apart as well.
Yeah. Moon Ketu period killed him. So
Let go
brain
of everything, let go of his mind.
Yeah, basically lost his mind and that was it. Yeah, he was writing like crazy at the end. He was going really crazy, but it gave him a breakdown. So we'll go on then. And Hasta, laughter, the hands. The spear kept coming up when I was doing this research in Hasta. This powerful, the impeller, the propeller. That was the other thing. I remember that in Hasta. The propeller, the agitator. And so like in washing machines, the agitator and that, the propeller on boats, all of these sorts of the propeller and pumps, all of these things came, yeah, that's, I remember all that was pretty wild. And so even that symbol of the propeller you see sometimes, and then it made me think if that doesn't connect, sometimes you connect the symbol of the propeller with the swastika. And so then that connects with the elephants and connects also with Ganesha to a certain degree. So, yeah, that dexterity, a lot of coordination. Jugglers, I think, come into that just that coordination of a circus person. In a sense, I mentioned clowns before. That all came in here. The handyman of the zodiac, mechanics, laborers, hands-on, everything and anything. Pickpockets, thieves had it, jewelry makers, acrobats, wrestlers. Yeah, it was the circus performers. All that gymnasts, that flexibility they also have. That flexibility is similar to, like you mentioned, Libra before. It's very similar. Swatis are very, very flexible. So you get some flexibility also coming in here. Very nimble fingers, stage magicians, palmistry, casino dealers, foragers, bookies, street hustlers, all of this kind of stuff. Heavy afflictions. Really, drink can be a big problem for hostas. It's that moon quality, that watery nature. They want more water. And so heavy afflictions, shameless drunkards, this sort of people end up having this. But we see planners, locks, safes, every kind of person coming with this. Their energy radiates outwards, and they often get things done by impelling others to do the work and put the results in their hands. So you get a bit of that boss man character in Hasta, which is sort of a carryover from the last Nakshatra, which is also a big boss. I want to see it in my hands, give it in my hands now. There's the gold, also finds expression in Hasta, beneficial. In Winnipeg, they've got the golden boy, little guy on top. I came into, where the heck was it? Maybe it was just the next village when we were coming to this one, came through this village and there was this great big huge golden Jesus on top of a church. It was the way the evening light was hitting and it was just like sparkling and shining. Yeah, it made me think of Hasta in a sense. The Midas touch. That's Hastas that have that Midas touch. Everything they turns to gold. And so that becomes a curse for Midas actually. So the success of Hastas can sometimes also be their curse. Always have duality that way. It's like, oh, wonderful, you turn everything to gold. Yeah, but I just touched my girlfriend, I think is what happened. It's like I didn't want her to be gold. Right? Like, give me my girlfriend back. It's a great gold block.
And that's interesting too, because in a way, like don't fix something until you can't use it anymore, right? It's like
Yeah, so yeah. I think,
yeah,
yeah, take it apart to fix it and it never gets put back together.
yeah.
And I mentioned here too, the golden tongue, so they can kind of fast talkers, they can talk their way in and out of anything. That's that, anyways, that's circus magic in a sense. A lot of optimism, refreshed, full of power, smile on their face, clapping the hands. That's a Hasta thing. A little ha ha, ho 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 to brighten their day. Laughter medicine, laughter yoga, that kind of thing we can do. And I think of a lot of this stuff, like for me, it's like people always want to know, like, well, what can I do? What's going to help me? What's a good practice for me? And so, like, it's like, well, do Gayatri. If you have Hasta placements, do Gayatri. Try laughter yoga. You know, all of these kind of different things. Try to learn to juggle, you might think, right? Why not? People are looking for medicine. Sometimes just something, that focus of it. You know, my mind's everywhere. Well, throw everything up in the air and then your mind is up in the air. And that's where it's supposed to be. So for those who may take the morning river and cup the hands, yeah, when you do Gayatri, you're supposed to cup the water and you pour it out and you look at the sun through the water that's pouring out your hands. That's what you're supposed to be doing when people do that cupping water thing. So that's a sunrise thing that way. I mentioned dual use technologies, handheld devices, wireless devices, all of this, Bluetooth, GPS, multi-tools, calculators, gauges, dials, instruments, all kind of, they love gadgets, I think is what it is. Hasta people just love gadgets. If she's the housewife, she'll have all the kitchen toys, all of that kind of stuff, trying to make things easier. Again, trying to make things easier, but it becomes more complicated. So a lot of things going on there. MacGyver, I don't know, it's maybe before your time, but very MacGyver type people. That creativity of the farmer in a sense. Make it work, Jimmy rig it. Make it happen. So anyways, let's just skip ahead. Go through that. See who's got this ascendant. And again, we're not too sure. These are ascendants, and so it doesn't take much, and they can be in a different, especially if it's first pada or fourth pada, a couple minutes, and they might be a different nakshatra ascendant. But anyways, here we are. Bill Clinton. Sometimes I see Hastas as like, you know, these like kind of Bill Clinton figure, these big goofy dads who's neighbor, and they always want to try to help people. And they always kind of make a problem by trying to help people in a sense, but it's like this big sort of like friendly, good-natured dad kind of figures, parental figures, but then they have some kind of a darkness behind them. They have, again, it's always that two-faced thing in a sense, with that duality of Hasta, of Virgo comes in. So Bill Clinton, on one hand, he's just this like kind of good-natured, kind of bozo of a man in a sense. But on another hand, he was president of the United States, and his job was to like kill millions of people or thousands of people a year. So you get this sort of dual use in characters in a sense. Gymnasts, so you get that, we talked about that flexibility and all of that. A couple generals, General Custer apparently has this. Anais 9, it's interesting, you see someone like Simone Biles, Anais 9 has this. She was very I don't know if she's Hasta, but she was, do you know Anais Nai? She was one of these militant sort of feminists, writing about her sex life in a sense. And she dated guys like Henry Miller and some of these characters. So she got famous that way. Anyways, so there's a couple Sarahs I know, they're both yogis. So again, that flexibility comes in. World War I, Jacques Cousteau, I don't know about that. Alexander was a character. Big guy. There's a lot of big people have Hasta. One of my uncles has it too, really big guy. So Alexander was a really big guy, but he worked a lot of the music festivals. He was the handyman. He was building the sets and putting up the stages and doing a lot of that for a lot of his travels all over the US to these, probably the electronic music for the most part. So he's been a roadie his whole life. And he's a deadhead also. So he's like it's not the circus, but from my perspective, it's just like the circus. A really cool, really nice guy he was. Got all kinds of wars. Like, look at this. World War II has here. I've got an earthquake, Hiroshima, the Korean War, United Kingdom, Canada. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. Canada, of course, it was founded on like just disposing of the local natives in a sense. So very warlike beginnings, birth of Canada. And so it had a lot of that Hasta, that two-facedness.
And they call it purification too, right?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. You see the UK here has this, the sun themes, and the sun doesn't set on the British Empire. That's that Savitur, in a sense. And Canada's almost that long in a way, like it by the time it sets on Vancouver, it's starting to, you're seeing Savitur from Newfoundland in a sense. So you get some of that. So it's kind of brutal in a sense. Otto von Habsburg, a big general guy, Brian Mulroney, Denzel Washington probably also played some big general guys. Nice fellows like Cat Stevens has this. Ken Wilber's interesting. I think he's the guy that called himself the philosophical entertainer. Someone like the Nadine S is a very interesting person. She was like a national security advisor for US and Iraq. She was living in the green zone in Iraq. But she's like a Reiki healer, like a sweet pussycat of a girl, the sweetest, gentlest thing you can imagine. But she was over living as a national security advisor in Iraq for a couple of years. She lived there, carrying a gun on the hip and doing the whole hardcore woman she is. But also that almost that two-facedness. She seems like such a nice, sweet, gentle woman, but here she is sporting a gun in a war zone kind of thing. Interesting to see someone like Anais Nai and Yoko Ono. They were very similar, very controversial. A lot of people say they probably ruined their men's careers and really male man destroyers in a sense. Those two especially. I don't know about a lot of the others, but they had pretty bad.
It's like touching something that you shouldn't be touching and modifying for the sake of modifying it rather than, yeah.
Yeah, these kind of, yeah. And they play out in their relationships and everything to a certain degree. You got guys like Stevie Wonder, Mr. T. These were they're like clowns. They're entertainers, but amongst the entertainers, they weren't dignified entertainers. They were circus acts who made it mainstream in a sense. Ben English, he was a pornography director. And so modeling company and pornography, I think he did. Howard Schultz, that's Starbucks guy, I think, isn't it? And so, yeah, you got some different, quite different characters here. Even Ayana T, she's very interesting. She designs her own clothes, and she's always got this really old clothes she makes. Looks like she's dressing people from the peasants from the 15th century. So that's almost a kind of a circusy thing going on there. We find more wars, more killers, bandit killers, and invasion of Granada, 9/11. Hasta is a pretty brutal nakshatra in a lot of ways. Kevin Spacey's fighting for his life right now. Wade Davies, he just retired as professor. He's promoting cocoa leaves now, big time. Couldn't believe it. Not that there's anything wrong, but again, taking these different sort of paths. He's this nice university professor, but he spent so many times with the tribals in the forest that he's this anomaly, probably like a circus character to most of these university professors. You know, Mark Twain too, his travel and his just a character, really. Antoine van Leeuwenhoek, also a character. Characters, all these people. So that's the ascendant. And now we come to the sun. And you expect sun to be in Savitur, you expect this to be fairly strong. And we see Pope, King, Heidegger, Faulkner, Pavlov, behaviorism. So you see some powerful people. Serena Williams really involved in healthcare. Ivan Pavlov, his behaviorism is like fully implemented in psychology these days. William Faulkner wrote some nice books, The Light in August, I remember. And I think this Light in August, to me, I picture the book that I used to have of Light in August, and it had this nice cover of this sort of soft light shining through. Everything was bright and sunny, but it was softness to it. Like a harvest, a soft, gentle harvest sunshine. And so that's almost the kind of light I think these people shine. There's a lot of light comes off them, but it's not a harsh light. It's a little bit softened somehow. Now that's hard to say because someone like Serena Williams, she's like in your face in a sense. But we see that Gwyneth Paltrow with her wellness brands, Avril Lavigne, I don't know if she hasn't gone there, she will go there because that's where the money is these days in a lot of ways. What else do we got? Yeah, some generals, Ip Man, right? Some fighters, lots of fighters with these Hasta placements, wrestlers, fighters. Lucy, she does art therapy, but she's also her lighting. She's got like a PhD in lighting. She lights up museum exhibits and this kind of stuff and does watercolor stuff. She's got an incredible eye for light. Really, really good eye for light. Can't believe it. This David R.B., he was also involved in, well, he got involved a little bit in Hollywood, but then he ended up opening a rental company, renting all the lights and cameras and renting all that stuff to Hollywood. And so he did very, very, very well in that. He's dead now. I know his son. But he did quite well with all that. Putin, Mahatma Gandhi. Very funny to see those two names together. I love putting them side by side like that.
I feel that would make like a great like buddy cop movie.
Yeah. But that's I don't know. Mahatma Gandhi was also very controversial.
And ruthless in his own way, from what I hear.
He what?
Ruthless in his own way.
Yeah, he really was. He was the boss man who called the shots in a lot of ways. Just like Putin, Ray Kroc, that's the fellow who started McDonald's. Rutherford Hayes, a big scientist. Goddard's a scientist. Buster Keaton, early movie actor guy, very creative, also very flexible, did all his own stunts and stuff. If you ever watch a Buster Keaton on YouTube or something, it's great. He's wild. That silent movie stuff, but he really God, he was a stunt man. It was crazy what he did. Caravaggio, he drew those really dark paintings. I think I've got one down below. But then you saw someone like Caravaggio, Anne Rice dealing with all the vampire books that she wrote. That vampire, what was it? Vampire romances, I think she was writing. Really popular. Like when I was in high school, it was like everybody read Anne Rice. She was huge. So you got some different Patrick Waugh, Mary Lemieux, you're getting some hockey players here. I wonder if that's, anyways, maybe that's related to circus energy as well. A couple music therapists, I think there was another one, but we had Sparrow, Susan Sarandon. She was like I don't know, she was like one of these early yoga girls, but with aerobics kind of stuff. Yeah.
So
Lin
I'm kind of curious in the sense, like I'm looking at this list and the previous list, and from our previous nakshatras, I don't like any of these people, and with Hasta energy at the end of the day. So is that something that's maybe related with my personal experience, or more related with my placements, or
well,
both?
it could relate with, I don't know, is your Virgo could be sixth house.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Okay, so that's a
yeah,
possibility.
sixth or seventh. Yeah, I always forget because it switches. My ascending is Pisces, if that helps.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, it would be seventh house then, so.
Yeah,
But
okay.
yeah, that's kind of the opposite of you in a sense, are these people. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But there's a thing where the opposites attract, and so I think, well, if you ever met Sparrow, you would think she was a lovely woman. You would love her. Same with Linda. You would think she's really cool and probably get along well with her. Um, but they would represent that opposite sort of energy in a lot of ways. Um, but it's interesting. You get someone like Olivia Harris. She was a X-ray technician. Linda SM. She also worked in a medical. She was like the right-hand man of some like cancer researcher, big time, big, really important sort of researcher guy. And she's just like did everything for this guy. And so you see these other ways where they sort of come into the medical fields in different ways, like Olivia Harris. She's not a healer. She takes x-rays. She just took enough x-rays of me in 1 year that I ended up doing her astrology. Right. So you get, again, it's this instruments and these gadgets. They really like all of this kind of stuff. Desmond Tutu, you wouldn't mind him. He'd probably be fairly nice. John Lennon has this. So there's a few. Yeah.
So I smile and laugh because like someone who's nice is a turn off for me. Like I want someone who's real. So you know what I'm saying? Like if it's nice, if someone's like too nice, it's just like I don't trust that. Like nice is cheap in a way to me. Yeah, I,
Yeah,
I think I think you're relating.
yeah. Ojas at the end of this, he keeps it real. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, there's but sun, I think really it's that light. It's that light people shine. And so these people do shine. I think there is a bit of a helpful light that they shine. They're there to help, to do something, to fix things, in some way, fiddle with things.
Like I love how Putin's helping Ukraine right now, right? As an example, he's helping them
Yeah,
join back with their family.
exactly. The whole world is helping Ukraine. Well, Ukrainians are loving it, I'm sure. Yeah. Give us more help. Yeah, make our rich people richer and throw
Yeah,
bombs in our homes.
exactly. Oh man, I'm so glad this isn't recorded.
So yeah, this is also with Hasta, that laughter, that joker, that practical. Pope Benedict. I'm not a man who constantly thinks up jokes, but I think it's very important to be able to see the funny side of life, its joyful dimensions, and not take everything too tragically. I'd also say it's necessary for my ministry. A writer once said that angels can fly because they don't take themselves too seriously. Maybe we could also fly for a bit if we didn't think we were so important. That's Hasta. You got to keep your sense of humor. And so Chevy Chase has this. There's a character for you. And so he's a great joker. So, oh, that's sun. Where's got the moon here? Where's our moon? Here we go. So there's the Ukraine 2014 Ukraine Revolution. So we've been helping them ever since then. um, yeah, overall, right. He helped us fly again, fiddling with gadgets a lot. Matt Beloy, he made a lot of really nice flute music in Ireland. You'd probably like him. Yeah, he'd probably keep it real. He'd get you drunk. Sherry Shepherd, Shania Twain. Yeah. So what is this? This is the moon and Hasta. Okay, so seeing a lot of people fiddling. Bill Gottslick did insurance, and then he was what was he? He was a agriculture minister of Canada for a short time in Mulroney's period. But you get a lot of, we've seen a lot of popes have this. A lot of, again, people just trying to help. Here we get some brutal, you get like Stonewall Jackson, William Harvey, Dr. Dre, Sid Vicious, some fighters, some gangsters, some, right, just crude sort of people. Sonny Liston, like boxers, these kind of guys. A lot of the people I know here, Joel, Callum, Kalia, they're all into music. They're all into like their DJ kind of guys. So again, fiddling these instruments, these Hastas just love this kind of stuff. Stalin, right? Mengele, he was in charge of all the propaganda in Nazi Germany. Walt Disney in charge of all the propaganda in Nazi America. Swami Vivekananda, Mala Yousafzai, she was this Pakistani girl that traveled all over the world fighting for women's rights and this kind of stuff. So you get a lot of that. Interesting, we saw Ray Charles, and there was the other blind guy, the other blind singer guy, Stevie Wonder. Is he blind? Yeah. So it's interesting, a couple of these blind guys here. So we got to think there's something going on with the eyes with Hasta. Seems to me, right? I only have 2 blind singers. The only 2 blind ones got that famous. So there's this kind of stuff. Clive Wearing, he was also into music. He got some strange kind of amnesia. That's interesting. Not blindness, but a mental blindness in a sense. And so I think what it was for him is every time he heard his favorite piece of music, it was like he was hearing it for the first time. He was just blown away by how beautiful it was. He couldn't believe it. It's just like, yeah, so it was really kind of a cool story with that guy. Kind of a strange kind of amnesia he developed like that. Yeah, a couple of yogis, Baba Friend, some philosopher, teaching some philosophy a little bit here as well. Tesla had this. He was quite an oddball. Jordan Peterson, Moon and Hasta. He's like everybody's dad. That's what I said before. These Hasta people, they're like parental figures. They're like dad figures. They figure they can put their finger in everything and have their say about everything and meddle with everything because they're dad. So it's like Joan of Arc, like she just forced her way into this battle. She's like, God told me to do this. And she just kept pushing and pushing, and everybody's like, fucking women, man, you can't do anything with these people. But it was her Hasta nature, just pushing to get in there. That sort of thing. A couple other musicians I have here, some doing some music there. A very strange musician, Martin D. He plays all these ancient sort of instruments. A little bit like a circus character. He's got all his white dreadlocks now. He's an old man. There was some other circus people here, but we'll leave it at that. Do you want to look at any of these guys' charts? Let's look at someone like Sid Vicious. Kind of a lot of work on his chart at one time. You know who Sid Vicious is? He was the singer of the Sex Pistols, the lead singer, and then he killed his girlfriend, and then he killed himself. And so the Sex Pistols were no more, but he was full like hardcore punk dude, 100%. Oh, that face he shows to the world, I think was this Saturn and Giesta, this just dark and dirty image he put forward. He was Rahu, he was like, I'm special, I can do whatever the hell I want. That sort of thing. And then his Moon and Hasta. Ultimately, he was comfortable away from all of that. All of that show, all of that shine. He just wanted to sort of be alone in a sense, I think, in Hasta when he goes away. But also that moon, Mars is aspecting, so it was also going away, and too much drink, too much fire water. Lost his life basically through fire water in a sense. Anytime you see Moon and Mars connection in the 12th or the 2nd, really, either of those, those people are drinking way too much. all 100%. If it's moon in a fire sign or any sun or moon, sun or Mars touching that moon up there, way too much drinking. So that was him. What else can we say about him? I think that's really that fifth lord, Yog Kataka Saturn coming up here, making him a lead singer sort of a character. Jupiter making money off the band and the groups, an expansion of his fan base, Ketu aspecting that, so it really exploded. Yeah, nicely placed Jupiter. It's also in a sun sign, Uttar Falguni, and so it's also sunny. Hasta gets, the sun by proxy. And so there was a lot of that light that he showed, and a lot of it's he's just trying to help the world, man. Punks. So I'm going fairly quick today. I'm already at Mars, and it's only been just over an hour. It might be said of psychoanalysis that if you give it your little finger, it'll soon have your whole hand. So we get to look at Sigmund Freud's charts. Neurotics complain of their illnesses, but they make the most of it. And when it comes to taking it away from them, they'll defend their ill like a lioness her young. So it's like, you're sick, let me help you with that illness. And they're like, no, I'm very happy with my illness. It's who I am. So now we're dealing with Mars here. Now we're getting really aggressive. So it's even like an aggressive use of logic, aggressive use of facts, a lot of like using blame and accusation as weapons in a sense. And so these people are very, very competitive, very aggressive, very warlike, brutal, detailed, systematic, brutal people. I do a little editing, let's say, as I go along. So, and here we are, Suleiman the Magnificent, Louis Riel, Sigmund Freud, Bill Clinton. Very sort of aggressive in their ways. Commander-in-Chief Bill Clinton, Louis Riel led revolutions, rebellions, male prostitute. That's probably from the 40s. Not an easy time to be male prostitute. But then you get Anna, she does like dance therapy. She's a dancer anyways, and so she teaches this as kind of a therapeutic thing to usually younger people. Dava, she was the first one teaching like tantric yogas in the west coast of Canada. She's an old woman now. But so she was this big sort of tantric guru, very independent, also very aggressive. Rebecca, Duane, Echo. Echo is interesting because I met her just in Guatemala. Was there? She's such a sweet girl, but she grew up in Rio de Janeiro. She was on the streets with the gangs. She was a full like gangster girl. So also she's like, I can be very aggressive and so she could be brutal, but you meet her now, she's doing all this wellness stuff. And it's almost like, and I wonder if this isn't the case with a lot of these hostas, some sort of like a born again moment in their lives where they also go from one phase to the other. And it's like the dawning of a new sun. It's that resurrection moment in a second, a new life that they get. Dwayne, I'll see him in Saskatchewan. He just started a new life. He's done that a few times. So maybe Mars and Hasta. He's kind of left all his old life and he's off there, doing a new life thing. So you get some different things like that. Powerful people. William of Cambridge, George Soros. There's a guy who's always trying to help, eh? Very helpful sort of character. I think I've got some research on him down below. That's what I should be doing. So I'll go through a little slower through each sign because I've done a lot of research in Hasta. So, where did I go here? So Soros, then we see like Nelson Mandela, Bill Gates. Like there's some powerhouse people. Sanjay Rath. He's a great astrologer. I know some people that he's their guru, but I know some people that also worked with Sanjay Rath for a long time and tell me he's the biggest jerk in the whole world. Too aggressive, too demanding and warlike in a certain degrees, that sort of thing. Turkish independence, that was all about secularism in Turkey. Ataturk was the guy who brought that in and made Turkey secular, tried to sort of bridge that gap between the East and the West. But then we get some massage therapies. Kate does massage. She's a master masseuse. I've never met anyone like that. Kalia does, well, he studied all this massage therapy type stuff, but he does aromatherapies. He comes to India and he really looks and gets the purest essential oils. And then he's like this magician mixing these oils and making his own thing. And he's like a perfumer or perfume guy, but he also does it for healing reasons. Ian and Zach, they're both handyman, basically instrumentation, and like a carpenter's just an apprentice now. But handyman, working with their hands kind of guys. We see that. We come down here, Jen L. She also does massage and Ayurveda, but also she's also like, her and her husband just bought a house and they're gutting it and rebuilding it, doing a lot of that work themselves. And so those kind of things come in. I love seeing there's like hardly any musicians here, and then you see Eminem and Elvis Presley's names come together. I think that's great. Right away I did that and I was like, oh, maybe Eminem's like the reincarnation of Elvis.
He actually calls himself that in a song. Yeah, because he's like and I think that's what it was like. Elvis broke into a mainly black field, and it's the same thing for Eminem, where they both broke into mainly black fields. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like the Elvis Presley of rap, is what he calls himself, as one of his original songs. Yeah.
Okay, cool. There we go. Yeah, wow. So this kind of stuff, you put it that way, you see Nelson Mandela in there as well, trying to bring the whites and the blacks together to a certain degree. Linda also, she's a black woman, but she's always dates white boys. So she's also doing that in her own way. Yeah, a couple singers here. Astra, she likes to fiddle with, she's a musician, but she like fiddles with her guitar and makes it like a new kind of thing. Fiddles with her amplifiers, fiddles with this, she's always fiddling with stuff. She doesn't just like play the guitar. Yeah, media guys, casinos, gambling, Sheldon Anderson, Kepler, Gian Gomeshi. He was known for his aggressiveness, not so much his aggressiveness. I don't think those women were so mad at Gian Gomeshi for his aggressiveness, but he was a bit aggressive and quite awkward as well, I think, with women. And so Gian Gomeshi had a whole bunch of accusations against him, and he beat him in court eventually, but his whole career was ruined and everything was lost. And you heard the stories, and it was like, he's pretty creepy, but I don't know if he's a criminal. Came very close to that line sort of thing. Even you look at his chart and it's like, oh, he's pretty close to the line on all of that.
And you had mentioned earlier too that they're part of the merchant class, and it rules over the thieves of the merchant class. And you just saying this where they play that line thinly, I feel Robin Hood is very Hasta energy. I don't know if you looked at his chart or mentioned him, but I feel like this is right up his alley.
Robin Hood? Who? Okay, Robin Hood. He came up a lot, and he came up all the time in Punarvasu. All these actors that played Robin Hood had.
Right. I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that's interesting though you say that, because now I think about it, there's actually some similarities between Punarvasu and Hasta. And they're not obvious in a lot of ways. Punarvasu goes into Cancer a little bit. Does it? Yeah. So it's got a bit of a mooniness quality to it there, but it's kind of Jupiter and Mercury, and yeah, they're usually kind of big people the same way as Hasta people. That size is similar. But no, yeah, there are some similarities between those two. It'd be interesting to look into that a little bit more. I wonder if Hasta would maybe be the thieves outright, where Robin Hood was stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, was his thing. Whereas these people, I think, are just taking.
there's more of a morality with Punarvasu kind of thing, whereas Hasta is just kind of trying to flip the script
Yeah, in a sense.
to
Yeah,
make something gold, whereas Punarvasu doesn't care about making it gold, but sometimes like Hasta's like judges that they need to flip the script to turn it into something good or something like that, whereas Punarvasu is just about hitting the target more than anything.
yeah, something. Yeah,
Yeah.
soul driven in Punarvasu. And here they're fixing. They want to problem solve. There's maybe not an overall goal, but there's a problem to be fixed.
Right, right.
And what's the goal? To fix that.
And they might not be seeing an actual problem. They might be creating the problem with their own perspective and saying, oh, I need to go fix this kind of thing.
Yeah, they're the handyman looking for a problem to fix.
Right,
They're looking for
right.
a nail.
A sense of purpose in a way.
Yeah, so it sees the nail everywhere. It sees the broken everywhere, to a certain degree. And that's sort of like that comes out good if they get into healthcare, because then, yeah, you see broken everywhere and everybody's coming to you to fix things. So, okay, do your job. So, yeah, this sort of stuff. But there's always a darkness. Like even like David Carradine, I sort of grew up watching this guy as this gentle sort of kung fu master sort of character in all these shows. And then he ends up dying by hanging himself from the ceiling while he's masturbating. It's like, oh, come on, dude. Yeah, it's very disappointing when you look at these sort of movie star heroes from youth and see them today. So that's sort of David Carradine. Again, that two-faced, it was all a show. It was all and that's what he did in the show. He went around saving people, saving the day, and being the nice guy. So like this, see, I've added a ton of names to this, but I haven't had a chance to go through them all yet. Gilles Villeneuve, race car driver. I don't know, maybe also mechanic fixing things all the time. Yeah, this Mars in the Ascendant, very dominant, aggressive people in so many ways. And Mars and Hasta is brutal. Like Mars and Virgo is brutal. Like I almost see it as a debilitation point for Mars. He's really not, the criticism is too aggressive. Everything's a problem. Everything needs to be fixed. Yeah, and it's just too warlike. It's too active on that imbalanced path. And so everything's a war, everything's a battle with these people, everything. They're just so critical about everything. It can be good if they get into a kind of work where you need to be very, very critical. And then it can work. But generally, these people's social lives generally suffers Mars and any of the Virgos because they're just too critical. Nobody can stand it, really. You know, and so it's good. Like you could say any Mars and Virgo, yeah, okay, buy a house that you have to fix. Buy an old house, never buy a new house. Buy the old one and you can fix it and make it yours. And then they get to use that fixing energy in a positive manner. Because while the house is 100 years old, that railing really does need to be fixed, or whatever it is. And so these kind of things with Mars, it's a tough thing. We see in the second, what is he ruling, ninth and fourth? So this is Yog Kataka Mars when he's in the second house. He's just fighting. Everywhere this Mars goes, it's going to fight, but here it's fighting for stuff, for material possessions. In a lot of ways, the voice and Mars gets activated. You get someone like George Orwell, right? He did that radio program that freaked everybody out, in a sense. Malala Yousafzai, I have no chance pronouncing that. Malala, she also went around like saying how awful and terrible things were for Pakistani girls, for example, going around and almost spreading fear with her speech, and quite aggressive with that. Kalyan, Anna, LN, they were both they're both really good speakers. They're almost like these circus people that they really can speak and talk you into anything. Kalia is like probably the most amazing sort of salesman. He'll sell you anything with his speech. It's really like really good. And that's what George Orwell, he sold people on the fact that there was actually an alien invasion. And everybody freaked out. That was Orwell that did that, or was that the other fellow? Wells, maybe. It was Orson Welles that did the radio thing. Anyways, but you got my point. You kind of really sell people on things. We get in the third house. This is where I think Mars really comes together with the hands. People working with the hands, fire and steel, and so they're using tools and weapons and all of these kinds of things. Zach was fully like a handyman dude. I don't know what George Soros does in this. Larry Nasser, he was a physiotherapist for females gymnastics, and now he's in jail for assaulting all these young girls. So maybe too handsy, too aggressive with his hands. Basically, I think is what that came to. Not sure. Louis Braille, that is the person, and they gave an AA rating for his birth time, but that is the person who invented Braille. And so that's the blind people reading with their hands and very actively engaged with their hands. And so that was kind of interesting to see his name come up in Hasta. What do we got? Oh, there we go. The broken home, self-defense, trouble in the home. And if we say Mars is debilitated, that criticism, that really it's going to come out in the home when Mars is in the fourth house. That criticism, that anger, those imbalances in the home, that's all going to come out. I don't know. I know Ian, he had a tough time in the home. Astra, Echo, the three people I know, what their childhood was, they all was brutal home life growing up. Really wasn't healthy for anybody. And so that was at Mars here. And now they're wandering a lot. They're traveling a lot. They don't really have a home base really anymore. That burned down in a sense by Mars, burned that bridge. And so they're always sort of traveling and roaming. Ian's lived out of vans for a lot of times, traveling and roaming, went down to Mexico, worked on a farm there. Echo kind of does the same thing. She's always on the move now. She left Brazil and she's just wandering.
Just use the washroom real quick, Mike, okay?
Yeah, okay. Okay. I'll kind of keep talking, so we're recording, but go ahead. And so then we get Kate and William of Cambridge. There's no more two meddlesome people in the world right now. They mean good. That's good intentions pave the road to hell. Certainly with the two of them, maybe Gian Gomesha, that was his problem as well. Terry McKinnell, can't remember. That might have been the guy playing around with mushrooms. I remember Joseph Conrad, though, The Heart of Darkness. And that was really about like going into, well, the book was about taking riverboat into Africa, I think, into the Congo, into the heart of darkness in a sense. But again, I think a lot of these people have to they see into their own heart of darkness in a way. So Mars in the fifth house. Here we get, well, you get the fifth house, you get that speculation. Anytime Mars goes into the fifth house, you get very speculative tendencies, risk-taking. We see Sheldon Anderson with casinos, resorts, all of that sort of stuff. Leonardo da Vecchio, I think that's one of the guys. He was involved in the early eyeglass business, I think. Maybe sunglasses. Yeah, something like that. An Italian guy really got involved in all of that sort of stuff. But again, very sort of speculative ventures, I think he goes in for. Not sure if some of these other people, I don't know them so well, but there's a couple of drug dealers involved in there. And so again, speculative businesses and stuff, and quite risky, I suppose, in its way. Get someone like Sigmund Freud from his moon. And he's very, very sexy man, right? They're looking for that romance stuff and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of times he was very sort of aggressive probably very aggressive with his clients because he slept with a lot of them, and so to make two into one in a sense. Oh, that's a shot, but that's okay. So then we get this Mars in the 6th house. And of course, this is war. This is the house of war, imbalance. Mars is going to be fully involved in that. You got Jumpy Stompanato, he was in the military. Some names I'm not sure if Marcel Proust belongs here or not. But maybe because the Mars it's war, it's certainly going to involve war. And sorry, I just kept talking.
No, that's all good.
Yeah, so we get, well, we just got to Mars in the 6th house, and so this is war house. But I'm looking at some of the names here, and while Richard Gatling and Bill Clinton and Christopher Columbus certainly had a warrior mentality, I'm not sure. Arti Yadav, she was like she had physical education in university, and so I guess for an Indian woman, she certainly had a bit of warriorness. But Marcel Proust, I don't know if I've got a wrong time, but he was gentle and frail, sort of a fellow. But maybe the 5th, Mars in the 5th was, maybe he had a lot of competition with other men and a lot of trouble with other men, because Mars will bring that, and difficult sort of hard enemies, difficult enemies to overcome. And so you get that. That's why Bill Clinton and Richard Gatling, Christopher Columbus, they had huge, massive enemies to overcome. But they did it. They conquered. So like that, I would expect, it's funny, I would sort of expect a little bit more warrior mentality by this Mars, because the whole identity, it's First Lord going in the 6th house. So the whole identity in this case would be going into those 6th house things. So I am war, I am my imbalances, I am my ability to fight the enemy in a sense with this Mars, and defeat the enemy would be a big part of their personal identity. But then with someone like, where was she? Linda, she works in a medical place. She's more of like an administrator sort of person, but it's like she's working in this place. They're dealing with eradicating cancers. And so these really harsh sort of like destroy the enemy, really aggressive therapies, you could say. And so maybe that's what we're seeing in some of these other people, some very aggressive therapies, very aggressive ways to overcome obstacles and fix things, in a sense. Here we get the Mars in the 7th house, and this isn't going to be a very, very pleasant position for Mars at all. He's rolls this, what does he roll? Oh, the 2nd and the 9th. So he rolls the 2nd and the 9th house when he's sitting here. But this is agreement. This is the 7th house. This is the place where everybody's supposed to get along, and fair is fair and win-win sort of things. But when Mars is there, this is why they call it Mangalik Dosh or Kuj Dosh. When Mars is in the 7th house, these people are, well, what I think happened is these are the people where they probably born from cesarean section, because Mars is aspecting their ascendant. So it was a bloody birth. And so they came out of the birth canal, and there was some threatening looking dude with the knife. And I think that's even worse when it's in Virgo, because it becomes, they get very sort of, they don't get good partners at all. They get very critical, aggressive partners. But there's another side, because this becomes the 9th owner. So 2nd and the 9th owner. And so the 2nd owner is bringing some, well, it's maybe bringing some prosperity from their partnerships. And I certainly know, well, Jen and Astra and Rebecca, the women of this have certainly got some prosperity from their relationships. I don't know if they've all been long relationships. I think a few years is maybe their longest. Maybe Rebecca, I think she's fairly stable in her marriage. But an AOC, I don't know what her relationship with Whitney Houston. Anyways, these are people that aren't really made for relationships. They're too aggressive. The women, I think they all want to beat the man in the relationship in a sense. And so there is that aggressiveness to win the negotiation, to win the peace sort of thing. We get it in 9th house, or the 8th house, sorry, now. That's 8th, yeah. And so I listed like revolutionary people. Very aggressive to get what they want. Strong appetite, sneaky mentality, changeable, manipulative, undisclosed sexual affairs. They'll lie about them. They keep secrets. Can't keep their secrets straight. probably experienced sexual abuse from a friend or a teammate or a boss or something like that. Cocaine addictions. I threw it all on these poor people. And there's Sanjay Rath. I don't know what he's doing there, but so these people are can be quite aggressive. This Mars is ruler of the 3rd and the 10th, and so for these natives, Mars isn't a good planet, and so there's a lot of harsh karmas, and their 10th house stuff all ends up in the 8th, and so they end up getting a bad reputation. It's like David Carradine. He ended up with this reputation completely got smeared. Elvis Presley had a bit of that. He really struggled with his reputation. He wanted to have like the nice European wife and nice family and everything's good, but that didn't work out very well for him, and he took that fairly heavily. Problems and infidelities in the relationship he didn't like that much. So Louis Riel, of course, revolutionary in Canada. Bhadrachanda Baba Shukleshwar. I think this is like this 80-year-old Babaji I met in on Parikrama Narmada. But I want to just look at let's look at Elvis's chart for a minute. Let's look at Elvis. Should look at M&M's too, because I rectified it. I didn't use the time they gave. But here's the chart I'm using for Elvis. AA rating, that's what I'm using. I went with it. And so that seemed to be working. There's his Mars 6th in Hasta. That might have been some aggressiveness. Or sorry, in the 11th. That might have been, oh yeah, I was looking at his 8th from the moon, but in the 11th anyways, this is where he would have made once in a while, he would have made some very quick, good money. And it might have been, maybe he got involved in a bit of crime or something once or twice in his career and made some good money that way. Got involved with some imbalances, but it's his ascendant lord going in the 6th. So he fully identifies with his fame, with his crowds, with his people, you could say, with the populist sort of notions of things. And I don't know if he was, I'm just sort of questioning if this is Elvis's correct time now, because this usually makes someone who's like an activist, Mars in the 11th house like this, because it's very aggressive and very critical, and it's a sort of critical mass kind of idea. What I noticed, because I rectified George Soros's chart for 1 year, he ends up with this Mars in his 11th house like this. I mean, scroll down to that. That's brutal. Let's look at those guys, because that's just making me think. Yeah, there's Elvis. We get George Soros, some hedge funds, so that ability for big money, but really weaponizing the big masses and weaponizing the crowds. Louis Riel sort of did some similar things. Ted Turner probably did similar things. AOC does like that. I know Zamin's big time into really aggressive activism stuff. Coney Sell. Interesting, Coney Sell and Zamin, both transgender people. Coney Sell from way, way back. Went from a man to a woman, and Zamin went from a woman to a man. Maybe 10 years ago, Zamin did it or something like that, maybe more than that now. So that's kind of interesting. That 2 of those kind of names would end up on here. But to see Elvis Presley's name in with a bunch of these others, I'm kind of questioning whether or not his chart is correct. Is all I'm saying.
I just looked up, so he gave a lot of Cadillacs away. He gave free concerts and gave to charities around Christmas time. Some people say that he helped white Southerners rethink their attitude towards Black people because of the music that he sang. So
maybe there was
it's all viable. I can see that.
Part of him that was kind of activist then.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. So we see George Soros as Mars Mahadasha. He had this open society, but really got in there with a lot of his anti-poverty work and basically weaponizing the marginalized people, weaponizing his healthcare, weaponizing his help. That's really what this Mars and Hasta ends up doing, is sort of weaponizing his way of helping. And I think Elvis Presley, for him, he was like Well, he was a global weapon against even things like communism, because he was like Captain America in a sense. He was everything America stood for. And so that was kind of weaponizing even his charities and his niceness. Like, look at America, we can just give away Cadillacs and this sort of stuff. So maybe. War against poverty, drugs. I would expect, I don't know, I just wouldn't expect it to be in the 11th house.
What's this in his second and third? The third rules vehicles, I think. So
Yeah.
Venus.
Venus, fourth rules vehicles.
Fourth?
Yeah, Venus rules vehicles and the fourth house rules vehicles. And
Why
so
does the fourth house rule vehicles?
fourth house is the things that cover us and protect us. And so it would be like the chariot behind the horses. It's that thing that protects you, it shelters you, it covers you. Our clothing is a covering is in the fourth house. Our clothing as an image is in the second house. So it's kind of the style of the clothing you'll see in the second house, but the quality of them you'll see in the fourth house. And so vehicles are also this sort of covering, this protective shell, like the chest even, right? That chest is that protective shell. And so all of those are fourth house.
So why do some astrologers say it's third house for short-term travel?
Yeah, well, that is,
So I guess it depends on how you're looking at the vehicle. If you're looking at it as a status symbol, it would be fourth house. But if you're looking at it as transportation, third house,
yeah.
maybe.
This
Just asking the questions. I'm unattached to any result.
no, I think the vehicle itself would be more in the fourth house, whereas the travel, maybe even the engine, the horsepower, maybe in the third. Yeah, I'm not sure. I usually think of the third when I think of the car. The fourth is the vehicle, but the third is like the people who are in the vehicle with you. That's your crew. That's your team.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so how nice that travel is, I don't know. Again, this makes me think, like, if we just turned Elvis's chart, needs research, of course, but now we'd get Venus and Rahu in the fourth house, giving much nicer vehicles, giving much nicer home also, beautiful home with Venus there. And then he brings more of a Libra in the ascendant, which would be much more balancing. His 10th lord, then his work and everything coming onto the stage, being a bit hard work, being a bit laborious. I don't know.
I haven't seen much of him, but I do definitely see the Scorpio rising more than the Libra rising in some ways.
Yeah, but he also did, his whole thing was to be
But
pleased,
there's Jupiter.
agreeable, and he really went overboard to be agreeable, giving away Cadillacs, so people liked him in a sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
But that would also match with Jupiter in the 12th, because that's very charitable when Jupiter's in the 12th. Gives lots away, especially to education and things like that.
Jupiter in the 12th be considered lucky in Vedic as well?
There is a certain bit of luck to Jupiter in the 12th, yeah, because, well, you have to have something to give it away to a certain degree, but then it's like your subconscious is always sort of guides you when Jupiter's there. It's just you're optimistic about what's inside, in a sense. That deep voice is kind of warm and guiding, in a sense. So this kind of thing. You see a lot of people, they go away to the ashram, they go away for a more of a spiritual retreat, they go away and look at churches. All
That's
of
what I went to two ashrams while my Jupiter was transitioning my 12th.
yeah, exactly. Happens too, yeah. And the expenses are in Jupiterian things. So you're giving money away to charity and humanistic causes. And so
Yeah, what I believe in, yeah.
yeah,
Like you.
yeah. I guess my Jupiter is up there, yeah. Give my life to humanity as best as I know how. Here, I got the strange thing I found in India. Listen to me for a while. I'm just gonna offer a 2-hour class. It won't be long. 3 hours later. So
Here's a strange thing this homeless person in India told me that seems to be the most genius thing I've ever heard.
yeah. So here we go. I got in the 10th house, this Mars. This is ruler in 5th and 12th, going to 10th, street smart survivors, beat to win. Lots of change, speculative risks, that 5th lord going into the 10th. And so their job, they're known for this. Gomeshi, he was online, he was out there. These two both got lost careers for reputation for sexual abuse, taking too much risk in their job. The 5th house, we always have to remember the 5th house is the 8th house from the 10th. So whenever 5th and 10th are related, there can be sudden shifts and sudden unexpected things coming in the job and the workplace. You have no idea what's going to come up. And that's also because they bring that creativity and they bring their own speculative intelligence. They risk something of themselves. And so here we get, William of Cambridge is kind of interesting because he got involved with all that search and rescue stuff. I was struggling with this actually. Now that I'm seeing it again, I was really struggling with this placement because to me it really did seem like disaster relief and all this sort of search and rescue of William Cambridge. But then you see these other names. Well, Larry Nassar, he was sort of helping people his own way. Well, yeah, I expected this to be much more militant than it is. But you see some like quite heavy drinkers, quite heavy sort of maybe they also get known for their addictions because I know Johnny Carson, Linda, that's one of the things she talked about in her, holds her back in her job was it's all these very straight-laced people and she goes home on the weekends and does mushrooms, right? This kind of stuff. Echo as well. She seems very straight-laced, but on her back, she's doing all kinds of stuff. So what do we got going on there? Let's
Sorry about that. Had a call.
yeah, no problem. So let's go on to Mercury and see what Mercury. If you want peace, don't talk to your friends, talk to your enemies. A Desmond Tutu. So just found tables. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm talking. So here now we've got guys like Warren Buffett, Henry Ford, big industrialist kind of people, Stephen Jay Gould, Nietzsche. This is where Nietzsche got his talk about Hasta from, and his thing, a lot of his duality, I guess, came through Hasta as well. It's interesting. We saw a few like Desmond Tutu, a few of these like civil rights activists with this, again, trying to help, trying to fix things. God knows if they've done any good or not. Mercury and Hasta. Usually Mercury relates with the narrative. So it's often like some sort of narrative of imbalance or narrative of fixing things. And then we get a lot of these richest people in the world, these investors, hedge funds type managers also seem to have. We saw it with Mars, Soros. Here we see Warren Buffett has these kind of places. So there's seems to be some speculation in Hasta as well, that risk-taking sense. Samantha Addy, she started some little wellness business like, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago. It was nothing. She just sold it for like, she made it public and it like sold, she made like $100 million or something like this just overnight from something that she started from nothing. So we see that mix of wellness and Mercury and Hasta. Of course, Mercury is in its own sign. And so these people are going to be very organized, very structured, very, very flexible as well, really able to coordinate things. Really, that coordination is a big thing. Maybe that's something with the Mars and Hasta people. Maybe they're weaponizing their coordination a little bit. I think one of the girls I know is that has it. I think she sort of runs things in the office, but I think she sort of wields her pushiness as a bit of a weapon in the office as well to kind of bonk some of those other girls in the office over the head. And she's not very, she has some friction with the other people she works with. Although she's like really, really good at what she does. Maybe too good. That's the problem. There might be a, I wonder, there might almost be a sense of perfectionism in a lot of these Hasta people, really trying to perfect and be too good in a sense. Like that. Some nice entertainers. Mercury's all about narrative, and so I'm looking for that sort of narrative of, I don't know if it's almost a rags to riches, a little bit, or riches to rags, or anyways, a narrative of that duality of forces between the sun and the moon, in a sense, a narrative of impelling things forward, maybe a narrative of sort of getting things started. I don't know. You expect these sort of narratives to come in. I also expect them to be fairly like Mercury and Hasta. Well, if this is the clown and the Joker and all of that, well, Mercury's also the clown and the Joker. And so there is a sense of maybe the Joker would even be a strong tarot for some of these people. But there is that sort of sense of playing around and clowning around to a certain degree. Maybe not taking everything quite very seriously. Certainly, I know the people I know here, they do very well, but they don't really take it that serious. Kind of like the Pope quote said before, you gotta be able to laugh at things. Don't take yourself so seriously. But very good with numbers too. Like I'm saying, I know a lot of these people, like they're in high business because really they're very intelligent. Their mind needs all that, those logical puzzles essentially to work on. And you get tons of those in business. We see mathematics, science. Sudoku dude had this, like the guy who invented Sudoku. No time. I haven't figured out a good time for him yet, but anyways, his Mercury's here. And so those kind of mind games and fun games, I'm sure all of these people would really like, and they would enjoy that sort of thing. Yeah, here's Bill Gates's name, Sophia Loren, big name. Interesting to see like K.N. Rao, another very big astrologer, and Sanjay Rath. And so there is that prophecy thing comes in here. And so I would think with Mercury, the prophecy comes through the words, in a sense, that kind of thing. Agatha Christie was interesting. She went missing one time. She never told anyone where she went. I think it was a week or two she went missing. And nobody has a clue. Like she wrote her own mystery story and nobody knows where she was for this couple weeks. Lots of speculation. Oh, she was cheating on her husband. Oh, she went for this, for that. Nobody has any clue. She never told a soul. She just disappeared, left her car on the side of the road and disappeared. They found her in a wellness spa at the end of the day. And she was like, oh, hey. And she just got there. And so nobody knows where she was. Yeah. So interesting kind of characters as well.
I'd say you and I would be that kind of person too, where we might just disappear for 2 weeks and then pop back up somewhere and just like be on TV or something, you know?
But we do it all the time. She was like a stable housewife who never did anything like that. So yeah, for us, it's no big deal. Nobody even thinks about it. I disappear for a couple weeks. I go for a couple months. Personally, I think I would have to be dead for about a year before anybody would notice. Before they would really go like, it has been a while since I've heard anything from Mike, you know. So this kind of thing. Bhadra Mahapurush Yoga, and it's in the first house. And so we get these big guys, big, thick, strong bodies, commanding stature. They're big fellows, coordinated, good communicators. Why do I have double periods everywhere? Quick-minded, quick learners, intelligent, logical, problem solvers, fixers, no problem service. They love doing it, military service, protective services, any kind of service. They like doing analytical services, debates, theory, art of the argument, rhetoric, tactics, negotiation. Double periods everywhere. I don't get that. Because it's in the ascendant, of course, they get that Mercury quality. They remain fairly youthful, a lot of energy their whole life. Like I said, I can imagine some kind of twin tower effect because this was 9/11. Oh. Also had this. Oh, Stephen Gage Cole, the writer of Popular Science. I don't know, quite a diverse crowd of people as far as I can tell. Joshua's been quite successful. He's a little frustrated because he's stuck. He was in the military. He sold, what did he sell? I think he was selling drones to foreigners for the American Army. He was like basically a Air Force salesman in the Air Force for the Army. So, but that was a lot of negotiations and a lot of that kind of stuff came up. Very good communications, could answer any questions, this sort of thing. Yeah, I don't fully see where all these people go together. Agatha Christie and Arthur Sillinger, of course, good writers, good communicators. Maylene Farmer, she ended up leaving Quebec to go and sing in Europe, did quite well in Europe. Bob Newhart, he was just a boring, goofy guy. Here I've got with his Mercury in the second, what's he rolling? The 11th and the second, so yeah, in his own house, he's always gonna do quite well. So all this is, second house is all about storage. And so Mercury's, all those talents will go towards storage and collections and gathering things, language, speech, all of that kind of stuff comes involved with this. So second languages, they're very good at, usually good, just good at counting money and taking care of the things they have generally, quite good. There's usually with Mercury in the second, there's something a little bit goofy in their face, something that's a little bit makes them seem less serious a little bit. Youthful, you could say, but keeps them from really getting taken seriously with some people. So I'm going to I gotta shake my energy up a little bit. I seem to be getting more tired after about 2 hours of these things. So I'm just gonna give me about 2 minutes. I had to charge my laptop. Now it's charged. I can go outside and enjoy the great outdoors. See this beautiful hostel. I'm not even staying here. I'm just here to use their Wi-Fi. I had a lovely chandelier up there, everything. This is great. I had no idea. Like this is a hostel. It's one of the nicest hostels I've ever been in.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool for there to be a hostel in between Quebec City and Sherbrooke.
There's like fireplaces and so many different little rooms. Great art on the walls.
Wow.
Apparently, he's a little bit of a famous musician, Quebecois musician. Apparently
Okay.
moved out here and owns this hostel. And oh
How'd you
wow.
find it?
Well, again, I'm not staying here. It's just the guy I came to stay with. And again, he's house sitting, so I'm not even staying where he stays. He's like, I never stay where I pay rent. So yeah, we're staying in these kind of incredible places. Jesus, there's a swimming pool over here and everything. I'm just looking for a little place. I'll just see if I'll get a connection this far away. The shade isn't very close to the house. Oh, lovely. Yeah, I gotta go way over here for the shade. Oh, we're still in action. See a lovely swimming pool. Just chilling by the pool now. Oh yeah, this is good life now. So had a little duality of Hasta. I have to bring some water out and celebrate the moon of Hasta and the nice sun shine that's up there. So now we're good. Oh, look at that tree I got behind me now.
Yeah, you're cutting.
Oh, am I? Okay, I'll go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew it had to be too good to be true.
Yeah, it had to.
There we go. Yeah, there's a little spot here. I'll just sit in the grass.
Yeah, it seems better. The video is laggy, but the sound seems good.
Are you hearing me all right now? Is this a
Yeah,
little?
the sound seems good, but the no, you're lagging.
Okay, I'll just go back inside.
Oh.
Try to fix things, right? Isn't that Hasta?
There's how we're playing
Just try to
Hasta
make
today.
things better. No, no, no.
You don't have Hasta, no golden touch.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go back where I was.
Oh.
Sit on the other side of the town. So anyways, back to Hasta with coordinated hands and fingers in the third house. Mercury is always very coordinated. You see a bunch of writers have this, songwriters. And again, I think the songwriters, because it's song and poetry, takes a little bit more coordination than normal writers. Although Stephen King has this, and he's about as normal and run of the mill as you got for a writer, but still, even his stories were a little bit strange. Clown stories as well. If we looked, probably find a Mercury when his clown stories came out. Some guitar players. What did I say? Guitar players? Oh, Sparrow. Oh, yeah, there's a few. Hank Williams, Don McLean. Again, that dexterity of the hands, the coordination in the fingers, all of this kind of thing. I see Evander Holyfield. Maybe he's got some harsh influences also on his Mercury, but it's hard to see him involved with all the rest of these people. Just look at his chart. No time giving, so I just made this up. And it doesn't look like I've done a whole lot of work on it either, so. It may or may not be his chart. We'll leave it because I don't think it is. So. What else we got in the third? Oh, I just gave something. No one asked me why all of a sudden Bipin Bahardi had something to say with Mercury and Hasta in the fourth house. God knows where I found that, but the birth of a great soul, thinking is very involved. Guides them to high status. Their understanding of divine wisdom is deep. They're especially an expert in the life sciences. And so you get Bill Gates. There he is. Fran Prasant. She knows everything. King Henry V. I think he was a pretty good king. The fifth. He wasn't like the eighth guy that was brutal. I think it all fell downhill after him. And then Jacob, I don't know much about him yet. He's just a young boy that doesn't know much about himself either. Maybe the founder of educational or housing organizations serving the disadvantaged who might live in such housing. They're often like the fallen native or the narrative of inequality in local politics and local housing and education. So yeah, you get a lot of that. That's Bill Gates. He's a big rich guy, but he still has that narrative of inequality and housing and land and all of this he's trying to reform. He did it by buying up all the land and increasing the prices by doing so normal people couldn't buy it. But again, he's trying to help. So we get to the fifth house and this Mercury gonna do quite well. Like I would think this Mercury you would want, there's nobody listed like this, but I would think this kind of Mercury is the kind of like, if you want to invest money, find someone to be with this Mercury, because that's that second lord of storage and savings and all of that. And it's Mercury, that intelligence is coming into the fifth house of speculative finance, but a little bit fun in games and not very serious, sort of maybe less serious and what they're speculating about in a certain grounds, more games and that sort of thing comes involved. I know Buddy Holly anyways was just very childlike sort of character in a lot of ways, or the second lord in his speech. Oh, Ursula Le Guin, she wrote some books. Used to have to read them. Athabasca University used to offer when East meets West. And it was like 3 of Ursula Le Guin's books were required reading. And so I didn't take the course. I just went to India. I was like, I'll just go to India. But they're kind of aliens. It's science. She's a science fiction writer, but she brought in a lot of stuff from the East. And I never did read any of her books. I bought one, but I never did look at it, read it. So this is in the 6th house. So that whole, well, already Mercury and Virgo, they already have a narrative of imbalance and that. So now it's like that's fully going on. And here we get its 3rd lord. And so that's also their narrative as well, the 3rd house. And so that's what they're talking about. That's what they're communicating about. All their communication comes into all these problems and stuff like this.
How would a Virgo rebalance in that situation?
How would a person rebalance?
Yeah, or the Virgo energy.
Oh, well, again,
Like, is it letting go?
No, I would
Exactly.
probably say that these people are like, they should get trained in health and wellness type stuff. Here we see neurological issues, hands, arms, skin problems. So I get into a lot of that. Sigourney Weaver and her wellness type brands. I don't know what some of these other people were involved in actually. But no, what I would say is use that, strategize. Like I would tell them, read The Art of War, read Clausewitz on war, read about war and strategy and tactics. Because these are the people who are going to be sort of good diagnosticians. They'll be pretty good at like figure out what's wrong, what the problem is and how to fix it.
So they need a framework basically to follow and abide by.
Yeah, these kind of
Yeah.
things, probably a specialization, some training.
Okay.
Yeah, in a sense. That's really, yeah. And so because it's the 6th lord in the 6th house, well, if there's any planet aspecting it, this could very easily, and it might even be a Viparit Rajyog, but certainly if it has any decent aspects, it'll certainly would be a Viparit Rajyog. But one of the things is when you get a planet in its own house, and well, especially the 6th house, this is your enemy. So it means your enemies are very powerful in a sense. And so you really have to rise, and your enemies are also very tricky, like Mercury. And so you can't just diagnose normally. You really have to use a tricky, cutting sort of mind to figure out what the problem is and how to fix it. And so they can be big problems. It's like a lot of skin issues. There's a lot of skin issues that like people are just like, I don't know how to fix it. They're very complicated. It's this really subtle balances of pH in the body somehow, a lot of times or whatever. So anyway, so it's quite tricky enemies. It's kind of what this Mercury does in 6th house. We get in 7th house. Mercury's not great when he's in the 7th house. It's not great for relationships because they don't take relationships seriously. Mercury doesn't want to sign a contract and get married. He just wants to shake hands and say, okay, we're friends. Oh, maybe we're a little bit more than friends. And so Mercury in the 7th gives these sort of immature sort of relationships, but now it's Mercury in his own sign. And so, well, in a sense, it can't be that bad. This can be a nice pairing. Got to have, when your 7th house is strong, you've got to have a strong 1st house or your partner's going to leave you, basically. Your partner is going to be too good for you in a sense. And so they get quite good partners when Mercury's. They're playful, they're fun, they're really highly intelligent people. They enjoy even negotiations and these kind of friendships things. But a lot of times what does happen, their relationships, even their partner, maybe it's a romantic partnership, but there's something they're more like friends than romantic partners in a way. So you get this kind of thing, which again isn't so bad. A lot of contract and that narrative of contract, narrative of bringing people together. But again, it's not, this is Virgo that's there. So it's like bringing very different people together in a sense. Yeah. So we got Mercury. When Mercury's in the eighth, he rolls the, what is he rolling here? Fifth and eighth. And so this is all right. His fifth lord rulership. It's brings that speculative adventure into the eighth house, into the taboos, into everything you're not supposed to do and not supposed to talk about. And it's just, that's exactly what they talk about. See, some scientists have this, like talking about their research. I think Paul Viard, the physician, was also a scientist, sort of a researcher kind of a character. And so you get a lot of that research. Robin DiAngelo, I think he put a lot of his stuff off as being kind of research. These people are likely to have some sort of secret hidden pleasures, in a sense, that most people might not, like if you found out about him, I don't think you'd go, oh, wow, that's a horrible person, he does that. You might just go, oh my God, I didn't realize this person was so immature, in a sense. They're just like a child with these little things. And so that can come on in a little bit. Of course, it's really good for astrology and all of this sort of stuff. Again, Hasta is that prophecy. You get into the eighth house, and that's fully that predictive prophecy of what's going to happen in the future, in a sense. Louis Riel claimed to be prophetic. Sanjay T is my astrology teacher. He's given all kinds of predictions. Steve Bubba, close friend. He's not into astrology or anything, but I think he does also sort of predict the future. He knows what's happening in his own way, in a way. And that's, I think, this this placement of Mercury. Let's look at Steve Bubba's chart. I don't normally look at my friend's chart. I prefer to look at famous people, but Steve Bubba told me he's free. So if he's free, that means he's no longer Steve Bubba, he's Shiva. So we can look at his chart. Oh, there he is. So Steve Bubba has his Mercury, there it is, in the second. Oh, it's in the eighth from the moon, though. So that's interesting. How many others these have that? Maybe. So one thing with Steve spent most of his life, he spent a lot of his life living in Japan, teaching English, actually, was what he did. He's an old guy now. He's born in 56, right? So he's 70 something. And so this Mercury sun in the second house made him a language teacher. Very good for language, linguistics, speech, rhetoric, very convincing. Anyway, so he's very good at all that kind of stuff. And still, even now, he's very good speaker. Very sort of convincing as well in his ways. But this is going on in the eighth house from his moon. Now, he used to shock people, because even when he was up in his 40s, he would oftentimes end up dating his students or sleeping with students by Mercury in the eighth house. And so he'd date these students, and it was almost shocking for people. They would be like, wow, is that like your daughter, or what's going on? Right. So he'd get these, he's kind of an average looking sort of American, but you get these, like, from his report, really incredibly beautiful young Japanese girls. So I think that relates a little bit with this Mercury in the eighth house from moon, possibly sleeping with students and romantic affairs with students and that kind of thing. Coming out, I think Louis Riel did a bit of that kind of stuff. Sanjay T, I know, as far as I know, he hasn't done that yet, but he's hoping to. Yeah, there's a lot of, I think in the eighth house too, there's a lot of talk about sex and taboo type stuff. I know Sanjay, Josh also sort of teaches Tantra, more of the sex Tantra type kind of stuff. Riel was really interesting. He was picking up all these, practices from the Native Americans. He was a Christian, but he was learning all these sort of Native American practices. It's pretty wild, actually. So father figures are exceptionally intelligent, the ninth house. So yeah, this really brings all those mercurial qualities into the ninth, into the father. The thing is, it's the sixth lord going into the ninth, and so there'll be disputes with the father. We could probably look Henry Ford and see how Henry Ford got along with his father Ford the First, right? The guy who started it. These sorts of things. I know Sophia Loren, she always not so much disputing with father figures, but kind of. He didn't get along with the church fathers very well. Now, get a planet in its own sign in any of the Kendra houses becomes a Mahapurush Yoga. And so this is the same as this Mercury in the 10th house. Now, guys like Peter Smith, computer science, certainly I would expect all that kind of stuff. But you don't see it in a lot of other people. Maybe Richard Gatling, he was also an inventor. Gatling gun, of course. See guys like Warren Buffett and Mukesh Sudoku really using their minds, their analysis. Maybe that's it. They're kind of known for that. They become known for that mercurial quality and their work and working with that sort of stuff. But, well, Buddy Holly, I don't think I have a good time for him, so we can't use his chart too much. Supports careers in law, politics, and accounting. Mathematics. I'm going to skip through here and we'll find some good names to look up. Something interesting to explore. Well, let's look at, I don't know if I've shown you Sanjay's chart. Have I shown you Sanjay's chart before? Okay. So this is my Guruji. And so fairly average chart. You see that really harsh Saturn he has. He's so what's his Hasta placement? So look at that. Mercury and Jupiter both in Hasta, up in the 12th house. This is well, one of the ways his Mercury plays out in the 12th house is he does a lot of astrology charts. There's a lot of Indians are still illiterate. They can't read or they can't fill out forms and things like this. And so that's his Mercury getting a lot of loss. He does so much like free astrology for people and helps these neighbors fill out forms and does even some translation work from English to Hindi, Hindi to English, this kind of stuff. And so that's his Mercury, and even his Jupiter. It all goes up into the 12th house. And actually there's a sense of, I think I've said this before, but he never really had any students until I came to stay with him. And then I stayed with him and started telling people, oh, Sanjay's a great man. I learned all this from him. And then people would go, oh, well, I forget about Mike. I want to meet his teacher. And so they go meet Sanjay. And he never asks for any money. He never charges any money for anything. He just does all this kind of stuff for free. He's like, I don't want anybody's bad karma. That's all they want to give you. They give you money. They would just want to give you your bad karma. And so he's like, I don't want any of it. So that's, I think, this Mercury Jupiter up in the 12th house. All this stuff has become a kind of free service for him in a lot of ways. And so that's that Mercury up there. It's just kind of, it's a waste of his time in a sense. It keeps him away from doing a lot of the other stuff he does. Now, because in the daytime, he's busy sort of taking care of the family and taking care of the guest house and taking care of mama and everything like that, is actually that's probably the sun up is in his 12th house. It's crazy. He does these long naps in the daytime in the middle of the afternoon, and then he's up all night writing. It's like that's when he can find peace and quiet. And so that 12th house, that's the nighttime. That's seclusion, that isolation, and he loves it. And so a lot of his life, he actually lives up. He's up at night doing a lot of this stuff. And so that's all the 12th house kind of stuff. And again, prophecy, astrology, that Hasta quality of it that way. Anyway, he's also just trying to help. He's also quite active, socially active and different things like that as well. So yeah, that's his Hasta. And there's an impeller, there's a propeller. It's like he doesn't sell himself as a teacher or a guru or anything like that. But he ended up getting like this one very good student who helped to make him famous and helped almost almost backfired on him because now he's getting all this work that he actually didn't want to do. He doesn't want to be a guru. But if somebody comes with questions, he has to answer their questions. He has to, it's his duty then to do these sort of things. And he also recognizes that, well, because he's a Brahmin, all of this stuff sort of connects him with Brahmin a little bit more. At least it's Brahmin work. So, okay, I'm doing a guest house, which is low. It's well below Brahmin, but I do astrology. I give some advice. I guide people. So I can at least claim to be a Brahmin in a way. He's very funny that way. Everybody knows him as a Brahmin, but he can't claim it unless he's doing some Brahmin work. Sadhguru, if you can handle your entire life with logic alone, you'll end up in a mess. Hasta. Only a fool learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So that's Hasta. In a lot of ways. I don't have much written about Jupiter and Hasta here. Just expansion to Virgo, expansion to Hasta things, crime, service, healing, all of everything gets expanded. Lack of trust is also a Virgo thing. That also gets expanded. Like for me, I look at someone like Sadhguru, and to me, of the gurus, he's like a clown a little bit. He's just the one who gets the entertainment and dresses like a guru. And so I don't take him particularly seriously in a lot of ways. Got some pretty hardcore military guys, John Michael Span, Lucky Luciano, the gangster. This guy was like, I thought he was military, but he was a cop. Jacques Cousteau, the explorer. Edward Norton. Went and lived in prisons to do these prison movies, really kind of hardcore. Get a couple music guys, opera conductor, drummers, Clay Walker.
And in Ed Norton, he also like in Fight. Ed Norton in Fight Club plays a clown too, in a way, essentially, right? Like he's just a fool in that movie.
Yeah, he
He's
does.
just an image, right? The real self, Tyler Durden is, yeah.
Yeah, there is that sort of, yeah, that comes up too as well. Yeah, look at John McAfee. In the end, everyone said he's just a fool. So all of that becomes quite strong. Bismarck thought he was doing really good, and now I curse him up and down because that was the start of the government just taking control of society much more. And he showed us our education system all come from Bismarck. But it's that, I think that's really this quote up here. If you handle your entire life with logic alone, you'll end up in a mess. And this is where Hasta people go wrong. Everything's all just logical. But it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You've got to have some inspiration. You've got to have that silence has to have its say. It can't just be logic and reason. Something deeper there. And so, yeah, that's Sadhguru. When he talks, he sounds so logical. It sounds perfect when he says something. So all of that kind of thing. All these musicians.
It sounds perfect, but there's no depth to what he's saying, right? It just, yeah.
Yeah, it's just surface stuff. It's, yeah, there's no depth to his Jupiter, his knowledge. Yeah. And that was kind of Otto von Bismarck. He took all the power away from the church and started giving all the social services and education to the government. And it lost a lot of its depth. It lost a lot of its meaning through these ways. I don't know if you've seen Sydney Watson on YouTube before. She also managed to become a clown at some point as well. Well, some drummers, some singers. Marilyn Manson, another guy, Jennifer Aniston. Nobody really takes Jennifer Aniston seriously anymore. I don't know how she managed that, but she's just, yeah, very much like that. I'd say Ranabir, he's fully suffering by that. Nobody wants to take him serious. And maybe that's something with this Jupiter and Hasta. It seems to be all over the place. Yeah, jihadists, American jihadists, Franco Bandando, another mafia guy, Lucky Luciano, mafia guy. What else we got? Yeah, I don't know, a few of those sorts of characters. Yeah, there's nobody really. Well, Sadhguru, some people call him wise, but there's not a lot of wisdom with this Jupiter placement, really. George Washington, okay, we give him a lot of credit for things. Couple researcher, Lister, Lumiere, Faraday, okay. Down in the fourth, they're getting a little bit more. Harold Washington, big time human rights character. Marie Antoinette, she all the time, she spent her whole life giving to the poor and trying to help out the poor. What happened was the courts, and she was into gambling and stuff, but the court gambling things, and she just ended up losing all her money in gambling because while people were cheating and taking advantage of her good nature, actually, she was actually a sweetheart, everybody sort of says. And then when she said let them eat cake, it was really she just didn't understand. She was just sort of divorced for that. And she probably would have given them her own cake. Like she was actually quite a nice woman, but she was very misunderstood, almost two faces. She was one way, and we learned about her another way. And George Washington maybe is a little bit similar, revitalized him, but he was actually a big jerk. In a lot of ways, not a nice guy, a lot like Genghis Khan, Suleiman the Magnificent, these big conquerors, they're bigger than reality in a sense.
It's like these people are great at creating an image in Jupiter in Hasta. It's like there's not necessarily any depth to that image, like Paris Hilton being a great example there, where she just created this persona that was sociable, and well, she went the other way into like the opposite of wisdom in her character, but there was wisdom in that, you know, and how she portrayed it in a way. So, but yeah, no depth.
Yeah, that's it. There's no depth to any of these people. And maybe we think of that water sun conjunction. It's like the sun reflecting off the top of the water. That's all you see. You don't see into the water at all. You can't see any depth to it. So there's certainly that with a lot of these people. Yeah, even someone like Mother Teresa, nobody took her seriously. She just withheld opium from all the suffering masses and did it herself. So, yeah, even some of the people I know personally here some of them are kind of brutal people, actually. They're not very nice people in a lot of ways. So that's interesting. But now I'm dissing my own teacher. Sanjay's got this Jupiter, and here I am. I think he's the wisest person I've ever met.
Let's
So
go back to his chart.
let's go back to his chart. We'll come to it here. We'll come to it here. We'll see what names come up beside his.
Yeah.
Let's skip to that. 12th. Oh, Jupiter 12th. Travel often, will see many getaways. Otherwise, will find themselves working with foreigners. So like solitude and peace may tend towards running away from their problems. I asked Sanjay one time, I'm saying, are you sure this is your chart? There's a heaviness of unfinished business that holds them back. They might get away for wellness retreats, health reasons, hospital stays as well for war. He never leaves the home. Younger siblings may go away from home. That happened. Younger sibling became a doctor. One may offer service in spiritual life for people so you can get away from it all. They have a temple near their home. They like to visit for peace, meditation. They have a lot of counseling and therapy to correct the imbalances of body and mind. Generous, charitable, suffering from swelling and bloating. So, yeah, here's Sanjay with his Jupiter in 12th house with Jennifer Aniston and Mauricio Perez, William Harvey, Rani Shukleshwar. Like none of these people are very nice people. actually. Not at all. Edward Norton, Clay Walker, Annie Shukla. So I just want to see something else. I could see it because he is very much a freedom fighter and he's like anti-government everything. And so there's some of that going on here, that anti-government sort of idea. He does a lot of counseling. Daniel does a lot of music. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that fits. But I just want to see what the first looks like. So these are a little bit bigger people. All about having a good time. I have my rights. Yeah, big bouncers, farm boy types. Yeah, Sanjay is definitely not that either. Some midwives, more people working medical field. Hasta, you know, in a way I reacted, you said you don't like any of these Hasta people. In a way, I did all this research. Hasta, I don't understand Hasta. I'll admit it, I'll say it out loud. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me somehow. There's something.
It's about the image. It needs to look golden. It doesn't need to be golden, I think is the Hasta point. It just needs, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm getting from it.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of that image stuff involved in here. Yeah, really.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it's all about catering to the surface of the water rather than making sure your pool is deep enough to dive into.
Yeah.
So that they want the pretty picture of that still lake and the mountains in the back, but you can't go in the water and you can't go touch the mountains kind of thing. Because if you touch the mountains, rockers comes and they'll trample you. And if you go in the water, well, it's got an inch of water kind of thing, because it's all about the image of it. That's what I'm getting from Hasta so far.
Yeah, and I see that over and over again with a lot of these
And have you been to Japan?
No, I haven't. I took a bus through.
So I get a lot of Hasta vibes from Japan because they do everything nice and fit. A bonsai tree would be like the perfect example of a Hasta, where you use your hands, you're careful with it, you're minutious, and you make it look pretty, but what's the point? Right. And I think that's what I get from Hasta is kind of like what you do everything with your hands, and the goal is to do something with your hands, but that's it. It's to make something look pretty rather than having something long lasting or something that goes, because like a bonsai tree doesn't last. It's just pretty for the moment when you finish trimming it, then you get a week of it, and then that's kind of it. So that's what I've got to pitch.
Yeah, maybe something. Now we see it in the third house. Look at these powerhouses. Suleiman, Otto von Bismarck, Genghis Khan, Meghan Markle. Big powerhouse people here. Yeah.
That would be the house that that Hasta is comfortable in as well, right? The third house and the sixth house.
Hasta?
Yeah.
Sense, yeah, there would be some there. Usually I look at the planet, the rulership, and so this Jupiter rules ninth house. And so there is going to be some good effects from this pretty beneficial Jupiter. And so he's in the third, and so I think that's just like lots of arms, expansion of weapons, expansion of power of the arms. Again, that's that mentioned with the car, the horsepower. A lot of that power is seen in third house. Yeah, that sort of thing. So here you get an abundance of that, abundance of power, abundance of weapons, all those different choices they get, in a sense.
And like you said, or like the third house is the engine, right? So if you put Jupiter and Hasta in the engine there, like there's this big mass of expansiveness that can happen with it, with the energy.
Big engine, it's a big motor, yeah, in a sense. Yeah, and so this is also in a sense like third house is kind of, I call it the house of free will, where we exert our free will in the third. We make some effort. And so they make effort through Jupiter. They talk to an advisor and they find the best way, in a sense. And then I think because it's that Hasta, so it brought more of the weapons, the arms, the military stuff involved with it. Brett Weinstein's name's here, but I don't have a good time for him. Same with Faraday. I probably have to need some rectification. And some of these we take with a bit of grain of salt. On McCain and Marilyn Manson, I'm not too sure either. And I don't know enough to bother bringing up his chart. So here we get into the fourth, and this is the 10th and 7th Lord in the fourth house. So anytime Jupiter rolls the two Kendra houses, they say he loses his first face, becomes a bit of a Dennis the Menace sort of Jupiter. And so here he's not going to bring the sort of spirituality into the home that Jupiter often does when he's in the fourth house, because he just has nothing to do with that. So he's more finding his own way. But again, expansion of the home, expansion of the vehicles, this kind of thing, lots of comforts, all of that sort of stuff. Fairly nicely placed. Like he rolls 7th and 10th. Those aren't, like, it's not the first, 5th, or 9th houses, so it's not a great house. But they're not, neither of them are really bad houses either. And so the negativity that comes in this Jupiter is she just loses that first spiritual dogmatic face, and he becomes a little bit more practical, you could say, in a sense. And so then you end up with all these sort of practical people here. I got a note here, home would be near the water, local rhythms, a lot of that thing. Usually they like their local culture. Yeah, medical supplies, local clinics, this kind of different stuff. So I can have some involvement in all that. I'm going to let's go back to all the names in Jupiter here for a second. I'm just going to bring his. So let's just look at Sanjay's chart again. We talked about his wisdom in that regard. And so here we see a few things going on. So his 9th Lord is up there with Jupiter. So his 9th Lord, that's giving him the mysticism. 9th Lord in the 12th house. But a mysticism, it's a kind of grounded, you could say, to a certain degree. Because Mercury's kind of in his own house there. And so Mercury and Jupiter actually end up making a bit of a special yoga, especially between the 3rd and the 9th. And so probably very good for his writing that way. And Jupiter's bringing an expansion to all that mercurial logic. And so really that's how he's taught me the astrology, really hyper logical sort of system, right? Don't tell me anything from an astrology chart unless you can point to the astrology chart and tell me why. If you can't tell me why, forget it. It's not astrology.
He's got the moon in Aquarius as well.
Yeah.
So that there's that ability to be able to communicate intellectually what's going on, right? With that.
Yeah, well, the moon does, gives the higher knowledge, the higher, wisdom. The communications is a lot. That's Jupiter, the 3rd house, or the spoken word in the 2nd house. 2nd Lord and 3rd is usually good for communication. It's a lot of his activism is Aquarius, Purva Bhadrapada, very socially active.
And his moon's at the 29th degree as well in Purva Bhadrapada.
Yeah, so it's just in that transition.
So it's a bit, yeah, exactly. So powerful moon.
Yeah, not so bad because it's air to water. It's not like a water to fire transition. Those are the really harsh ones. His moon is also at Makaraka, so it's really connects him to who he is. I remember
What's at Makaraka?
At Makaraka, that's the planet with the highest degree in the chart. It becomes a person's soul planet. So it becomes in a lot of ways be connected to who they are as a person. And so usually it becomes a special planet and it gives it a different flavor, a different power. So that's these Gemini Karmanas from the highest degree to the lowest degree. And so that's all that scale does. The Dada Kataka is the last one. That's our partner, our spouse. The fifth one is the Pita Kataka, which is children. And so I find I use those quite a bit. I look once in a while, conjunctions between the Amata Kataka and the Amatya Kataka, the first and the highest degree and second highest. Any conjunction or connection between those becomes a very special yoga. So there's little things that you get from this. So his moon is very much, and so he is a caretaker. He takes care of the house, he takes care of the guest house, takes care of his family, takes care of his wife. The Saturn in the seventh and Ketu's aspect to that gave him a really bad wife. But he takes care of her. He does his duty. So that kind of thing. Let's look at so we get Mother Teresa's. She's got the Jupiter in the 11th house, and so she actually, oh God, she was horrible. She was reselling a lot of the medical supplies she was gathering, and people were giving her, and the opium and the drugs and all of these kinds of things. She was reselling a lot of that. And so this kind of thing, she was very good in the 6th house. And this is probably with a Mercury Jupiter conjunction, or in the 11th house, sorry. Mercury Jupiter conjunct in the 11th house. She was really good at fundraising, right? She was going to these, like, well, it's a huge thing. Her name still makes huge amounts of dollars through fundraising. And so that was that Mercury Jupiter, that expansion, that lots of wealth, lots of profit. Jupiter is the 5th house lord and the 2nd house lord, so speculation and saved goods or stored goods, all coming from the marketplace, from friends, from networking, from connecting. And so really, I think this Jupiter Mercury almost gave her a superpower in that field of fundraising. Very, very good at that kind of thing. So, but funny thing, you see it then all 6th house from the moon. And so there's probably something criminal attached to all of that. There was something imbalanced in all of that fundraising she was doing. And really there was. Everybody kind of knows that now. So it's funny, Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa, they're both revered in the West, and they're both almost despised in the East, where they're from, where they did their work.
I feel there's a similarity in our leaders in the West as well, where they'll be liked in the East, but disliked in their home native lands. Or it's like, right? Like Justin Trudeau is a perfect example, right? And we can say Barack Obama in a way, where he's got like the highest kill count of a president over the last 20, 30 years, right?
Oh, yeah, very much. So that's that duality, that two-facedness of these Hasta people. Really quite strong. So we get to Venus and Hasta. What is a cynic? A man who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. Work is the curse of the drinking class. Or is progress, peace is stagnation. So Venus loves all this imbalanced stuff. He's like, great. Progress, man, progress. Right? Work is the curse. My responsibilities, it's a curse to my enjoyment. Oscar Wilde. So they like all this, love to be of service, women, sisters, all of that comes into play. Venus, of course, is considered debilitated in Virgo. And so that's why it's also work in a drinking class. So those imbalance, they love their addictions. They love that imbalance very much. Women, again, that practical, that logical aspect comes in. So how women react with, well, Venus and Virgo, but especially Hasta, I think, because it is so practical. It's like that woman who, she knows all the steps to make herself beautiful and attractive, whether she is or not, but she puts on the short skirt, she puts on the little tank top. She's looking at her attraction in a purely logical way. Right? So if I want to attract men, okay, short skirt, little tank top, my nipples are pointing out, perfect, all the men will be attracted. But she doesn't sort of realize, again, where she's going wrong with that thinking. okay, they're attracted to you, but they're only attracted to your body, to your surface elements. And what you want is men who are going to be attracted to what you have inside, what you have a little bit deeper. So that sort of becomes a problem. It's like that logic and beauty, they don't mix very well. So they consider it a sort of debilitation. The system of logic is the realm of shadows, the world of simple essentialities, free of all sensuous concern. To study the science, to dwell and to labor in this realm of shadows is the absolute culture and discipline of consciousness. And so it's don't stay on the surface, go dwell in the shadows. That's what Hegel tells us to do. Because what does it say? Anyway, so like that. All the sensual concentration, the study of science, dwell in the labor in the realm of shadows. So I'm not actually sure what he was saying. So you get this sort of thing. Shivananda, this is another Guruji. We love Shivananda. He was a pill pusher. He was fully supporting the pharmacies. That's how he got his fame. He got a pharmacy and started providing drugs for the poor. But I think he was also a lot like Mother Teresa. I think he was also probably on opium half the time of his life, opiated. And so Venus, and always he loves this balance, very addicted to pleasure in a sense, this kind of thing. Picasso, again, very well known for his love affairs with young women, this sort of thing. Certainly never wants to marry them, just have his affair and enjoy it. And so he ends up getting a lot of sort of trashy women as well. That's kind of how I see Venus debilitated, as more trashy women in a sense, because they like, their idea of beauty is like colorblind people, right? Two colors, they don't go together, and they go, oh, that's beautiful. You throw something in the trash and they say, oh, that trash is beauty. Let's make art out of that trash, in a sense. So you get all of that kind of thing coming with this placement. That was Christopher Columbus, had quite a few placements here. Also got some drummers. Let's look at Christopher Columbus's chart for a moment. It's got to be kind of interesting. And who knows what the time of some of these old fellows. There it is. So, kind of curious. Excellent rectification, very close, I said. So I'm a master. So anyways, that was the given time, and this is the time I came. I'm very proud of myself for this one, apparently. So, so this is Christopher Columbus. We see, yeah, Neptune, Venus, Mars, all in Hasta in his fourth house. And so that was, well, I've seen this before with Saturn in the fourth house. This is that safety on the boat. Their home is a very dangerous place in a lot of ways, in their living area. And so they have to be very proactively defensive of their home, their homeland, and their boundaries. And certainly the boundaries on a boat, you have to be very proactive about maintaining those boundaries, or someone's lost at sea. So that kind of thing might be influenced there. But then the Venus is debilitated. Where's Mercury? Oh, but here we get, and this is fairly common actually with debilitated Venus, is that Mercury then goes into Venus's house, because these two planets are always so close together. And so this is quite common. And so it gives a reversal of that debilitation of the Venus in a certain way. And so debilitated, so a trashy house, but well, anyways, it was Canada, it was North America. It just hadn't been built yet, the house. So it was okay. It was rough, it was loose, it was some debilitation there, but also some really great thing. So his exploration and all of that really gets pushed through that Jupiter and Rahu. And because it's Jupiter debilitated there, then what's happening is all his exploration is also becomes very practical, very earthly, worldly exploration. He's not exploring the mind, he's exploring the map, the world, the chart. Megara Shirsha Ascendant, they love map making, navigating, map making, map charting, all of that sort of stuff comes in. And then that Mercury is very strong again in exchange with Venus. And so these are the things he became famous for, he became known for. These Sun and Mercury things. Short travels, or travels, you could say, generally. So. Yeah, also a navigator, so probably had some, I don't know, some pretty fancy, nice instruments, maybe. Right, like back in the day, that nice brass telescope and the nice compass that, you know, was a special gift from somewhere. Those kind of trinkets that sailors love. And so Shania Twain has this, right? She's the epitome of the powerful, independent woman that no man in the right mind. She's beautiful and pretty, and she knows how to do all of that. But there's also a lot of imbalance. Even her songs are about getting cheated on and these kind of things, these sort of relationships. So that's all fairly common with these Hasta placements, really. We see, well, the first Queen Elizabeth I. She was the one right after the big reign of terror of Henry VIII, and then Queen Bloody Mary came in, and then Queen Elizabeth came in and actually stabilized everything. So there is a stabilizing force. Some say Genghis Khan did the same thing. Bill Clinton, World War II stuff. What time is 11, 12, 1? So we're gonna let's skip ahead here. So we've seen the Venus. What else can we say? They love wellness. They love fixing things. Like, that's the thing. They love fixing things up. They like making things pretty. In a sense, I think there's a lot of makeup on these women as well. If I look through them, some I don't know, but like Emma Stone and Zenobia, a lot of makeup here, a lot of really work to make themselves look pretty. And so there's again a lot of image here with this Venus. And that's really it is. It's just too practical for beauty, too practical. I know all the steps to look attractive. I know all the steps to be pleasing, but somehow they end up missing something because of the practicality. They're missing that flow, that harmony, that balance. Is usually everything's sort of out of balance with that Venus. So we'll skip ahead to Hasta, Saturn and Hasta. The heart of karate is real fighting. There can be no proof without a real fight. Without proof, there's no trust. Without trust, there's no respect. This is a definition in the world of martial arts. So that's Kosin karate this guy started. And so he wanted that proof. He wanted that, and that's very much that logical, practical aspect of Virgo and Hasta, and Saturn becoming like wants proof, wants the practical, very practical. So that all that commitment, all that service, really disciplined, bound and duty bound to be somewhat coordinated and coordinate things to a certain degree. This was KRS who said, I don't know if I agree with this, but give gloves to your servants, basically, so they take care of their hands. So they say our servants can have really rough hands with the Saturn. I don't know. I think generally speaking, these people are, let's just look at the people. So not many of these people have rough hands at all, that's for sure. And so maybe they do have laborers that are doing all that work by hand. And so yeah. Oh, there's Pam. Gee, she does labor work. She's been like landscaping and gardening her whole life. There's a couple of engineers. Squire Whipple was an engineer, military man, so he got his hands a bit dirty. So there's a blend, a little bit of this sort of thing. Responsibility. I don't know, maybe they do have servants to kind of fix things for them all the time. I know a couple, like some of these people I know here, Rosio, Anisha, Vidanga, Nancy, Pepe, Lizette, Daniel, Ranabir, Solman. What happened to Pam, man? I gotta go. Anyway, all these people came from very wealthy families, actually. They're very sort of comfortable people. Except Pam. The only one I know. They're all like Paris Hilton, Lizette.
So there would be a debilitated Saturn maybe potentially, or some sort of yoga that weakens it, or
Well, this Saturn usually, because Saturn, you could say it's your servants. In a way, it's the people who do service, who work for you, in a sense. As one way to look at it. And so this Saturn in Hasta, I think, is actually quite a strong. It's not like I said, Mars is almost like debilitated in Virgo, but Saturn does very well in Virgo because he's service and it's service. And so it puts all this, they offer various services and they do very well with it. A lot of them very responsible. And so some financial services here. Embassy workers, very well-connected families. A lot of these people I know, very, very, very well-connected families. Kyle N was Nancy N's son. They're connected that way, very wealthy. He's got a bunch of businesses in Montreal. Yeah, it's interesting. I put someone like this Jack Anderson, the hard journalism, really harsh logic, hard way of losing, really sticking to the facts becomes quite important to them. Again, a lot of fighters here. Genghis Khan, Satyo Oyama, Ip Man, Superman, some general. Williams also military, flies helicopters, search and rescue stuff. So there's a lot there. Christian Barnard, a heart surgeon. So a lot of these people have done quite well. Hans Christian Andersen, all his, fairy tales are still huge, famous. Let's look at Christopher Reeve's chart for a second. Because he was knocked off the horse and was paralyzed from the neck down, basically. And so I think that has to do this second lord and third. Both of these connect with the neck in some way. And then I think the Saturn, the sixth lord, house lord coming up there and aspecting, coming up there, sitting there. I'm not really sure. I know well, Sun and Saturn will give sort of brittle bones to a certain degree. And so when we see that in the neck, well, maybe, why not, in the third house? This kind of stuff. The Ketu and the Ascendant brings a numbness, a general numbness to the body. Of course, it's odd to see it so powerful in the paralysis, but then as Ascendant Lord Moon goes debilitated with Mars, getting a bit of a reversal of debilitation, but again, it's a very harsh reversal because it's Mars. And the two of them are making very powerful yoga for stage work, presentation, performance, all of that kind of stuff. And it was he was jumping horses, I think, when he fell off the horse and broke his neck. I think what they called it, even though it was like a hangman neck somehow it ended up breaking, or there's kind of there was a name for it, the way he broke his neck. But again, I think that relates with this moon Mars also in the fifth, bringing that sort of thing. And then Mars is also the sixth lord from the moon. And so I think that really contributed to his neck problems. Anyway, I think his Superman persona comes a lot from his moon, Mars and Jyeshta in the fifth house. And so in a way, Jyeshta, I don't know if it's quite a Superman. I would quite think Jyeshta is Superman, but it's a hero. And so Superman's certainly the hero. And so Jyeshta really comes, it's who he is, it's what he's identified, it's what he does, it's what he performs and presents. And so that really becomes quite a strong thing in his chart. So we're skipping along again. I felt like I was going so slow, and so I slowed down, and now it's like, oh my God, we're at the end. I don't have time. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants, Rahu and Hasta. There is a bit of a giant thing in Hasta, I think. Again, that big man is in Hasta. But Rahu, oh yeah, Rahu is said to be exalted here. So let's see this exalted Rahu people. So we get a couple popes. Even Wolfram was quite interesting. He designed a whole new way of learning mathematics. So he did that kind of thing. So that's again that hyperism of the logic made this man into a really great mathematician. Togo, back to Togo, I can't remember. But I think he was also a scientist. Noble family. Oh, he was a samurai. There we go. A controller of revenue, master of the wardrobe, and district governor. Nobleman from the same clan as her husband. Oh, his wife was. He died of throat cancer. So here we get a nobleman. I said 9 a.m. seems very close. So anyways, that's yeah. I seem to have some confidence in it. Again, I think that Saturn in the Ascendant making very formal and very sort of stiff. Where are his Hasta moon and Rahu and Hasta in the 8th house? And so that was really, anyways, the cycles of death and coming very close to death. He probably killed people or came very close to killing people as a samurai. And so he must have did some fighting feudal Japan, a samurai back in those days. So that was his moon Rahu in the 8th house. I think making him very comfortable with all the changes and all the shifts and comfortable with the cycles of life and death and fighting and killing. And so anyways, very good. Again, that hyper logic of Rahu, hyperizing the logical side of it. William T. Volman, I've told you about him. He wrote like 6 volumes on how to justify violence. So very detailed and that very hyper logical, wanting to understand violence from the really logical perspective. Sort of saying it's not just an emotional reaction. There's some logic and reason for this violence. So he really dove into that. See more scientists. Here, Gary Gilmore, few scientists, few politicians. It's funny, I like a lot of these people. Yeah, I really do, because they're the unusual Hastas in a sense. And so like, yeah, William Volman, I loved him. Wes S was a close friend of mine. Me and Papu never talked, but we hang out at the same chai stand at Varanasi. I really like him. Shakyaman, me and her kept in touch for a long, long time. These kind of things. Well, else, Jack Kerouac, gotta love Jack Kerouac. Let's have a peek at his chart. With anyone who's traveling like me or you or any of this kind of stuff, he's like a guru, whether you like it or not. On the road. And the Dharma Bums, all those great novels, great books. And so he's got that moon Leo ascendant Purva Falguni, and so people were very comfortable with him. He just had that sort of familiarity aspect to him. Even people didn't know him. And then you get Saturn, Rahu, and Hasta in the 2nd. And so that's really hyperizing his logic. He had a bit of a mental problem, a little bit cold emotionally or something like that. Not exactly sure. But yeah, he was, the way he talked, his talk was always complaining and very argumentative. In a lot of ways, stuck in those cycles of imbalance, on the road kind of idea. There was a lot of that in his life. A lot of different things. If this is a second house, the Saturn is going to want to rigidly control the diet somehow, while the Rahu is going to say, like, well, it doesn't really matter. Eat what you want. But Jupiter can bring some wisdom, make a person well fed when he's in the second. So which usually means giving a bit of money as well. I don't know if Jack Kerouac actually had much while he lived. Yeah, so that Saturn Jupiter then also makes not a Yog Kataka, not a Danyod, Rajyog. Rajyog Kataka, they might call it, or a Raja Yog, because it's the Lord of the fifth, Lord of a trine or a trincone with the Lord of a Kendra. And so anytime you see that, you could know it's a very high, powerful yoga. And so Jack Kerouac had that for his image, for his speaking, for his storage, for his wealth. And so did very, very well in all of that stuff. So let's do a quick look at the Ketu and Hasta. Aleister Crowley, I slept with faith and found a corpse in my arms on awakening. I drank and danced all night with doubt and found her a virgin in the morning. So he was a strange dude, Aleister Crowley. Do you know anything about Aleister Crowley? He was like,
All I know is that he's like this mysterious dude that would wear like a black long overcoat, raincoat, and a top hat kind of thing. So he's got this mysterious kind of
he was really the magic, really into all the magic and mystical stuff, but really into the ceremonies, the ceremonial side of magic and witchcraft, really into all of that. I meet some people that are into him once in a while. But to me, he's pretty just out there. Then you get someone like Carl Jung. It is a primordial, universal idea that the dead simply continue their earthly existence and do not know they are disassembled spirits, an archetypical idea which enters into the immediate visible manifestation whenever anyone sees a ghost. So that's Ketu, is ghosts. And so you get Aleister Crowley, you get ghosts. We're going to see ghosts, man. Nostradamus, the great astrologer guy, Ken Rao, another great astrologer, Aldous Huxley, tomorrow. I don't know if any of these people saw ghosts. Maybe they're ghosts now. I don't know. Maria Simonov, she did plastic surgery. She came up with this great way of regenerating nerves. Blew everyone's mind. So some people might say, oh, wow, you fixed my son. It's just like seeing a ghost. You know, she was very involved with a lot of like car accident victims and these sort of like emergency care or plastic surgery. Rocketry guys, fighting guys, Soros, Dirty Harry type characters. Pretty badass bunch here in the second, especially. Larry T, he's a yoga therapist kind of guy. Big guru down in I always want to say Houston. He used to live in Houston, but I got to Houston and he doesn't live there anymore. He lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I laughed. I said, well, I'm not coming to visit you there. So these kinds of things. What else we got going on? Carl Jung. Have we looked at Carl Jung's chart? Let's just look at his chart and then we'll call it a day. I know I just keep going forever.
Yeah, I don't think we've looked at it in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big guru, so it's always worth looking at his chart. A little bit. You can see his time is all, there's been so many different times given for him. And this is the one I came up with. Make the big guru and the ascendant. Where's his Hasta placements? Oh, Ketu and Hasta up in the. So I don't know what that means. This Rahu is fascination with fixing things down here. And so maybe at the end of the day, his Ketu just didn't care. If I fix them or not, it's not my job. Just get them out at the lake house. We'll have a good time together. And they can go home feeling a little bit better for a little while. I don't know. Because that Ketu's kind of ambivalent towards all this Hasta stuff in a way. So I think there's some therapists here and some cops, people trying to fix things that way. But a lot of times I think they don't really care. Some gangsters here. Oh, a few gangsters here. So,
And also like all these people don't care if it's pretty, you know, they don't care if it's balanced. They just care to like push whatever they want to push in a way. Does that make sense?
there is some of that, yeah. Yeah. I was looking at guys like Ram Dass. He was this great spiritual saint, but he was gay. Look at Tom Waits. He's kind of a great guru. I love his music, but he was like very imbalanced sort of person. But it's like almost like their imbalances don't hold them back with this Ketu. It's not a huge, who cares? You've got addictions, you've got this and that. No problem, come. So we'll wrap it up at that, I guess.
I guess, yeah, just I guess one last thing. It kind of sounds like Ketu would be exalted in Hasta in a way because it's letting go of that attachment of that golden touch in a way.
Yeah, there is that, but in the Rahu, you get some pretty, these are some pretty I don't know,
Works on both sides.
they've done fairly good in a lot of ways. So maybe the nodes do fairly well here, generally speaking.
Yeah, because it's like there is you need to have the because it's freedom in a way of the expectation of Hasta and Ketu, but in Rahu it's the obsession of achieving what's good and what's beautiful. So it's like, is it possible that they work well in both, in Rahu and Ketu?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, why not?
interesting.
Why not? Yeah, they both seem to do fairly decent there. And so like it's well, this is a little bit
Because
like Ketu in sixth house, they're numb to the imbalances. They're not affected by war or anything like that. And so that usually feels pretty good to people.
wouldn't you want? I want that, like, you know, in a way, like that's
Ketu in my
freedom,
sixth
right?
house, it's a great blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful blessing to have that. So I can put up with all kinds of imbalance and people are like, oh, aren't you suffering? I'm like, what's the big deal? But then that logical side, like Rahu seems very good at harnessing that logic for material gain. In a sense, where this is going to go a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more, they make good healers. They can work really well in areas of imbalance because they're not affected by it. So this kind of thing kind of comes out here. So you sent me a message earlier. Was that message to say that you had time today for astrology reading after?
Yeah, does that sound okay with you, or would another time be
Yeah, that
better?
works very well. Why don't we take like
Yeah.
I don't know, a half hour, or even we could say even 3 o'clock or something.
I'm could we take a little longer, maybe like an hour and 15 or something like that?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just because I just got a huge download from from this, so I need to
Yeah,
rest
yeah,
a
yeah.
little more there. I just, yeah.
So
Um
let's do that.
in an hour and 15, so I guess that would be 3:30 for you.
Okay, let's say 3:30 then. Let's go with
Okay.
it. Now, I'm gonna say that, but my time isn't my own. And I told the guy I was coming here and like, oh, I'm gonna do this class and then I'm gonna be reading after. And so he's
Okay.
pretty, we can probably hang out. It won't be an issue, so.
Yeah, and if it changes, just let me know and we'll see. That's what the stars had planned, right? If it doesn't work out, then we'll work it out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's aim for 3:30 then. And
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you later.
yeah, Mahadev, friend.
Mahadev.